Welcome back to the Aviation RC Noob Podcast. You found us. My name is Joe.
And I'm Matt.
We're here to be with you along your journey and to share our experiences in RC aviation. If you have any questions, thoughts, or want to share a flight story, hit us up at aviationrcnoob@gmail.com. Now, buckle in. Let's take off.
All right. I'm so excited you're here. We have an amazing episode for you guys today. We have with us today Sam Platt from TheHangarRC. I want to welcome Sam to our show. Sam, glad you're aboard.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're here. He has a whole line of amazing options for us foam builders to get something a little different and a little bit kind of more exciting out of the box than I think we might be used to dealing with. But first, as we always do with all our episodes, we like to go through what we've been doing in the hobby in the last little bit. And now I know I always go first. Oh, wait, maybe Joe goes first, but Sam's never gone first.
Oh, you're right. Right.
Sam, you want to go first?
Sure. I'll have a stab at this.
All right.
Okay. So the first thing is I'll have you know, with running the HangarRC, it takes up a lot of my time, but when I do get the chance to get out and fly, which just happened to be last Wednesday, and I got to fly during my lunch hour as well as in the evening with my children.
Excellent.
I got to fly the Vulture, and it's been a really long time since I've flown the Vulture, because I've been flying, other airframes, but man, I tell you what, that I miss that airframe. I really do. Mm-hmm. So at my lunch, I just ran quickly and put it up. Actually, here's an insider peek into the hangar. I was able to record an episode, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But put it up, had a blast, had a camera on it. It was just so enjoyable because it's been a little while. And especially a long while since I've flown the Vulture.
Right. We'll see about putting a link to that little video, at least the one you shared with us, if that's all right with you, Sam, in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Yeah.
And then that night I came home and, you're my end of day routine, eat dinner or whatever, say hi to the kids, say hi to the wife and whatnot. And I told my son, I said, go clean your room so we can go and fly. And he gets all excited because he likes it just as much as I do. So we took it over to our local junior high, and we were able to put it up in the air. And I gave, I get it all trimmed out because it's been a while, just making sure everything's dialed in. And mind you, this is the Vulture that we built in the build video. So
this one's got a little age on it.
Yeah.
A little age. I would guess that I probably have over 50 flight hours in this particular bird.
Whew.
Yeah. Dang.
Pretty good for foam board.
I'll tell you what. I was looking at the video, and I'm looking at your flight, and it looked like a lot of fun. And I was kind of like, man, I wish I was out there with you. I'll admit, I'm a little jealous of your flying site. Like, wow, you've got like 6 or 7 soccer fields all butted up against one another with like nothing obstructing anything at all.
And we've had a few incidents with the soccer goals as well, trying to fly through.
Well, that's because that's part. Look, that's part of the pylon racing. Okay,
right. Well, when you have a whole family and then your friend's family out there watching you, egging you on, it's kind of. Of course, I can do this, and. My plane met the pole really quickly. But it was cool. Anyway, so that evening, sorry to get back to it.
No, please.
But that evening with my son, or my family, I guess. It was my whole family. So my 4 kids came with me. And then this junior high that we fly at is just kitty corner from our house. It's literally less than a 2-minute walk.
Nice.
So my wife said, I don't want to go. You guys go. So we all piled in the truck. I already had my stuff in there from taking it to work and flying on my lunch. And we go over there. I put it up in the air. Flies great, just like it does always. Hand the controls over to my son. It's been a really long time for him since he's flown as well. Just because when I don't take him, he doesn't go. Anyway, so we took him over. He took over the controls. I don't have the buddy box with him anymore. I did ask him.
Nice.
Last we left off, he was able to launch by himself. Still wasn't able to land, but he didn't want to do that just because he felt he was out of practice. And I'm like, that's okay. So we put him up. He flies around. He flies for a good, at least 5 minutes, because that's when my transmitter started beeping at me. Bring it down. Check the battery. We still got, and this is after my 5-minute flight. So far we've got 10 minutes on the airframe. We still got 7% left on our battery.
Okay.
I'm like,
Right.
we're going back up. Put it up,
Right. Now,
and I let my
if you don't
daughter.
mind me asking,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
How old's your son?
Right now he is 12.
Okay, keep going. And I'm just going to ask what ages that your kids are flying at, because I know as a listener of different things, I'm always kind of curious to see, because I'm trying to get my kids in, like how early do people kind of introduce this hobby to their kids? Obviously it's about aptitude, but I'm always curious to see when they've got their kids in the hobby, how old are the kids?
Right, and,
So,
and it makes total
pardon me.
sense. And no, you're good. My son has been simulating from the simulators for a long time.
Mhm.
And if you go on our Instagram page and our Facebook page, you'll see there's a video of him actually flying when he was 9 or 8.
Nice.
I can't quite remember, but yeah. And then, so anyway, scatterbrain.
That's good. No, that's good.
Back to the story. So I take back control, land the plane. We check it. We still have 49% or 7 or whatever it is.
Right.
And my 2 youngest daughters are begging to fly. I always try to get my teenager to fly, and she just kind of, no, I'm good. But a typical teenager, I guess. She doesn't want to drive either, which is really weird to me, but that's another story for another day.
Yeah.
And so I hand it to my my second youngest, and she puts it up there, and she's doing great, and I'm kind of helping her. And I didn't have the buddy box set up, so I just have my hands basically hovering over the control. She's got the lanyard around her neck and over the transmitter, and I'm just hovering there just in case.
Mhm.
And by this time, it's getting pretty dark.
Mm-hmm.
And the plane's getting to be not quite, but pretty close to silhouetted. And I'm like, okay, we gotta be done. And my youngest, she's begging to fly. She doesn't know how to fly on her own yet, but just so you know, my second youngest she is now 10. Is that right?
Okay.
12,
Yep.
11, 10, 9. She's 9. Anyway, I can't remember my kid's age. Come on.
Look, I only have 2, and it's hard for me.
Oh, right.
And I'm the one who's got to host all the birthday parties. You think I'd know.
Yeah, right.
Anyway.
So my youngest is 8, or she will be 8, and she's begging me, I want to fly. I'm like, okay, great. So my second youngest, who's flying now, she's coming, she has it way out there, and I'm like, okay, I can get this back. She started getting a little bit low, so I grabbed the transmitter, and mind you, I'm basically hugging her, manipulating the controls. Well, long story short, I lost orientation, and our field's pretty big, but I put it clear off on the other side of the field, and it was nosed into the ground.
Oof.
Oh. Yeah, well, it's just the only thing I have connected this plane was the one we built during the build video. And so I was like, I was kind of bummed about it just because of the sentimental value for the plane. But you know what?
Right.
I'll rebuild, and I'll actually rebuild with a different skin, because this one that we built in the build video was not my favorite skin of the Vulture. So I'm going to build with my favorite skin and have me a new one and whatnot. The problem is I just have to rebuild it.
Mm-hmm.
For our listeners who don't know what the Vulture is, if you could just give them in a couple words what kind of bird a Vulture is, that'd be a big help, just so that they kind of have an idea.
I got one word: rad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I didn't expect that word. How's that gonna? Okay.
No.
So is it a glider? Is it a racer? Is it a, that kind of thing?
It's an easy to build, easy to fly. I guess I'd call it a trainer, but it's a vintage style trainer. That's what it is. Easy to build, easy to fly, vintage style trainer.
Okay, cool. Good. That'll just kind of give them an idea. And obviously it's go back to any early balsa trainer plane with the
Yes.
crazy dihedrals, and that's pretty much what you have for sure.
Mhm.
Exactly.
So good. Okay, good. Thank you.
No problem.
So you tank this thing in. Like, what did your kids say?
Okay.
Because I always find it funny what comes out of my kids' mouths when that happens.
So by this point, my wife had come to the field with a friend that we're friends with, and they said, they're there because we're going to go get ice cream. Anyway, so my wife's reaction was, Sam, because I'm a better pilot than that.
Yeah,
We all are until we slip up.
until
we're not.
Yes, exactly. Until we're not. And so, my the one that was flying, my second youngest, her name's Cameron. She's hilarious because she's resorted to call me, like, she learns that we ignore mom or dad. And so she calls us by our first names, which we did to my parents. It's not a big thing, but the way she says it, and she goes, Samuel. It's just funny. So
awesome.
But they kind of said, what happened? I said, well, it's dark. I lost orientation. I mean, that's what happened. And then it tanked into the ground, and it did kind of a spiral, which was it was kind of fun to watch. But at the same time, it was so far out there. I'm like, oh. And it's that gut reaction of whenever you crash any of your airframes, you're like, oh, yeah,
there goes my fun.
Yeah.
Oh man.
You're like, I can't fly this again that night. I mean, I don't care that we crash. That's part of it. But it's the thing like, oh, that means we have to clean up for the night. Because I didn't bring any other airframe. I just brought the Vulture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh,
yeah. Exactly.
So there you
go.
go.
That's part of the joys of foam board, I think.
Yes. And that's the beauty of foam board as well.
Exactly. Nice. That sounds like it was a good time.
It was a blast.
It reminds me of kind of what we did just recently here. So, Joe, do you want to go next, or you want me to?
Yeah, I can go next. I'll try to keep it fairly short because I did get well, it was only two flight sessions in since our last fly-in, as you called it. So to start. Last weekend, my wife and I went up to see her parents, and you'll remember that I had worked with my father-in-law to build the Simple Cub, my father-in-law and my brother-in-law, and we had built the Simple Cub, and I had tried to maiden it. It had problems with the maiden, which in sort of like, even retrospective in the moment, it was like, this issue, like, I had the ailerons off because I was wanting to go ahead and set him up as a 4-channel, so that he could get that aspect of it, and get the feel for that. What I've learned since is start him as a 3, start somebody off as a 3 until they've got a feel for what's happening and they're comfortable starting out, and then you can go to the 4. I know plenty of people that say, well, I wish I hadn't learned as a 3-channel and I had just gone straight to the 4-channel, but if you've never done it, the 3-channel is just easier.
Right, it's only one stick to pay attention to.
Right. So anyway, I talked about the issues of that where I didn't have the ailerons quite right, and so as he and I talked after that session months ago, I kind of told him what I thought was going on, this, that, and he did some repairs on it. So when we went up this past weekend, last weekend, we managed to get out and do some flying. I had taken the Spitfire up with me, and I said, if we can, if your back's feeling up to it, because he had been feeling better, and for anybody wondering who might be, he has gotten some surgery. It appears to be doing well for him, so hopefully he'll be able to be out and fly a little more. He and I can fly some more, so not to fill up too much time on that, but we did get out and fly, and he had done really good work repairing that, and I kind of took out the aileron. I took the ailerons out of the mix, just turned it back to a 3-channel. The ailerons are still there, but the servos are just kind of locked in place. And I was really nervous because once we got out, like at his house, there was no wind, and then we get out to where we're wanting to fly, and it was not just windy, it was gusty. with a steady wind, and then some gusts kicking in. It was like, where did this wind come from? And then later that night, when we got back to the house, it was calm again. So it was just location. But we did maiden it again, so secondary maiden, and flew it successfully. We flew it on his DX6E, the simplified controller that he had, and I got it up. I kind of got it trimmed in, and I flew it around for a little bit and set it back down. A bit of a bumpy landing, but landed it. And then we kind of talked about it a little bit, what was going on with it, and then I sent it up again. Flew it around for a little bit longer because he wasn't quite wanting to take the sticks yet, and so I flew it for a little while and felt the wind out, kind of pointed out what the wind was doing, this, that, and the other, and then brought it back down and landed. And he said, "Why don't you get your Spitfire up in the air?" So I did. I launched the Spitfire, and we were flying out at an elementary school, actually, where my wife went to elementary school, out at her old soccer field. So he was reminiscing a bit out there. And as soon as the where we were standing and where the direction we were launching, there was a pond wrapped in trees, like 30, 40 feet off to our side. And due to the direction of the wind that we were, the headwind as we were taking off into it, he went to hand toss the Spitfire for me, because I'm not to a point of being able to hand toss the Spitfire really well yet.
It's a special skill to be able to hand toss and get your hands back on the controls fast enough to be able to correct for any initial errors in launching or situational items. So yeah, I feel you.
That's why I've adopted the mouth technique.
We put it up to your mouth to get the one. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. You do a left-handed toss, throttle up with the mouse, so your right hand's on the sticks for control.
Yes, sir.
Not a bad methodology.
It's sadly my whole left side of the body must be slow on the uptake, because apparently I throw like a 4-year-old with my left hand. Actually, 4-year-olds probably do better throwing with their left hand than I do.
So
anyway, continue on.
No, you're good. So he ended up chucking it, and I told him how to chuck it. It was all good, but the wind grabbed it and instantly pulled it to the right, which was going to bring it behind us and over the pond. And like his gut hit the floor, my gut hit the floor as I'm watching the Spitfire roll and bank off over this pond that I can't see. Like, it's just behind these trees. But we're watching this like go, and then there's this is only second time I've really had the Spitfire out, so I'm still yanking bank on the sticks trying to feel her out. And I get it under control, and all right, give it some more throttle, so I got some more control, get her up in the air, and, all right, we're good, we're back over safe ground, we're good to go. Flying around, he was over there. Whew, I'm glad you didn't put it in the water. Me too, buddy. Trust me. And
foam might float, but it doesn't hold up well to water.
And anyway, so flew it around, did some laps. I was kind of showing him, coaching him through. I'm setting up sort of a flight path, especially in these windy conditions. Just fly a big, racetrack up there. Just find a pattern that you're enjoying, feel the air out, enjoy it. I mean, it was windy enough that the Spitfire, which again, with the motor that I had on it, I was having to be like 75% throttle just to really keep it kind of in the air and doing its thing. There was periods that Spitfire was kind of not quite hovering in place, but it wasn't going very far, very fast. It just had enough headwind up there, and just the fly.
So you flew at scale.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I do.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. That's what we call it when it's a little like we call it scale.
Scale, right.
Then we'd be proud of it.
Mm-hmm. That's what it is.
So, flew some laps and brought it, was going to bring it in for a landing, and I ended up kind of tanking it at the last second because I botched my approach and it got squirrely on me. And anyway, so
the ground winds are always a little iffy. Just when you're bringing it in, everything seems consistent. Then you get really close to the ground, and all of a sudden, weird stuff starts happening.
Yeah.
You're like, oh god.
Yeah, well, you got that ground turbulence. So once you get close to the ground, like we're coming off the school building was sort of up on a hill. So you've got the school building itself generating ground noise, and then it's kind of rolling down the hill. There was a tree line, but then like there's some like farmland off to the side, but then there is a tree line, and like so up there's clean air, but then you get down, and you can kind of feel as soon as you transition, all of a sudden that plane goes, "What are you doing?"
Right.
And I ended up tanking it, which replaced the prop. We talked for a little bit, launched it again, got it back in the air, and then flew it around for a good little while longer, and then brought it in. Didn't have quite the landing I wanted, didn't put it down quite where I wanted, but safe landing, did good. And I said, hey,
Good.
Are you ready to fly? Like, we've been out here, it's windier than I would like. We've been kind of hanging out, waiting for the wind to die down a little bit, maybe, and it's just not. So do you, like, I would really not want to go back to your place and you not had a chance to fly. And so, happily or begrudgingly, humoring me, whatever it might have been, he said, okay. So I put it back up in the air, and I kind of coached through, all right, put his cub back in the air, and said, all right, I'm hands off the sticks, this is what it's doing. See, I was going this way, now I'm correcting, I'm using a little bit. Coached through that, I said, okay, are you ready? And he said, oh, yeah. I said, all right, because I didn't even have the neck strap on. I just went to hand him his receiver. And
Here's the transmitter, you mean?
yeah, the transmitter. What did I say? The receiver?
Yeah.
My bad.
You did. That's fine.
So I handed him.
I was going to say, did you throw it at him and say, hot potato?
So
Just make sure your motor's not on.
Yeah, right.
So I handed him the transmitter, and he had about like me way back when you handed me the controls to the FT Delta or the Arrow or whatever it was. He had about 3 seconds. Now, we were about 3 accidents high at this point, but he had about 3 seconds like, okay, it's cool because he hadn't really touched the sticks yet. And then he started doing some input and then reacting to it. I was watching the plane and I was like, oh no, because here it comes. It just like banked, turned, started losing altitude. And
2 accidents, 1 accident.
Yeah. You go for 3 accidents to no accidents real quick. And
yeah, you do.
It started tanking and nosediving, and a couple thoughts run through your mind at that moment, which is, one, man, I really wish I'd set up a buddy box for this thing, but of course we'd have taken all day to do it because I'm watching it come down and I'm just like, oh no. And then the second thought that runs through the head is, okay, he's starting to recover. Like I saw it kind of like nose back up a bit. It's like, oh, okay, it's starting to recover. He might be able to get it, and then it drops down again. You're like, oh. And there's like one.
Okay, maybe not.
There's like one fence out here, one fence that runs around the soccer field, and he hit that fence like a daggum homing missile. I mean, I showed you the pictures. Like the front end of that plane was just jacked. And
well, fortunately, so here's the deal. Like those pictures showed me that that's a very repairable accident. Mm-hmm. It looks worse than it really is. To repair it is actually not that big of a deal, but yeah, you're like, oh, I just made mincemeat out of my plane. Oh, like a cheese grater.
It was bad, but it is repairable. So we spent a little time talking about it. Things he can do to repair it, how he can reinforce, cut some areas out, recut some areas, print out the plans. Glue the sheets together because he's going to have to do the tile, or he may work with his son who might have access to a large plotter, whatever. We talked about some options. So he's going to see about repairing it as his home project, busy type stuff. And we kind of talked about what happened. And he said it would make sense once I saw, how the plane was acting. He said, I think I might have I think I might have mixed up and confused my sticks in that he went to try to pull the nose up, so aileron, elevator up, but in the by mistake, pulled the throttle to nothing. And it was at that point when he said that I realized I'm not sure that I actually ever reviewed the controls with him.
Oh no!
Step number 1: review controls.
So write that down in the booklet of teaching somebody new to fly. Go over what the controls do, because it just made sense to me. Like I knew it.
Right? Well, yeah, because you'd done it, right? And then we'd sat down with the simulator for not long, but enough to kind of go, okay, this is how the sticks work.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you had it wrong, it was obvious quickly, and then you're like, oh, okay, it's like this,
right?
All right, cool.
And even when I fly in my like other games, I've got a full HOTAS set up. My throttle's on the left, and my joysticks on the right. So like that kind of stuff just makes sense. And because I was the one setting up the control surfaces, like I knew these controls over here, this controls over here. And it dawned on me that I don't think I ever actually went over with him what the sticks did. I just here's the stick. Like, and so that was a personal failing on my part. And
what mode was that?
Mode 2.
Mode 2.
Whatever's
yeah, it's a.
So throttle's on,
but he was operating as if it was mode 1, where basically the side switch.
Right, but not that he was trying to operate in any specific mode. He knew the control was over there, but in that snap reaction, if I'm trying to do, he just got a mix, pulled his throttle 0, which he thought he did when it was in the, like once it started to recover and then it dropped again. He thought that's when he pulled the throttle to 0. I'm thinking he pulled it to 0 when he was first taken over, based on the way the plane just dropped out of the air. So
he was trying to bring it back up, probably correctly, but by doing so, he completely
he cut all his power.
Yeah.
So makes it hard. A failing on my part as somebody taking him out to teach him to fly. That said, mistakes are how you learn when doing this. So I hate that it happened. But we got a little bit of a chuckle out of it. He laughed about, he was the one that made the homing missile joke into that fence line. He's like, it was the only fence out here. How did I hit it? Like, if I had been hilarious. 5 feet further that way, it wouldn't have been nearly as bad.
Exactly.
That's hilarious.
So he's got some repair work to do. And I told him, I said, look, the next time I come up, I will have done the research that I need to do to buddy your DX6 into my Turnigy 9X. So that I can't, because I said, I could have taken that controller out of your hands and recovered the plane. I said, but, like, it's your plane. It's your controller. I don't want to be snatching stuff out of your hand. It wouldn't have come across. I said, I'll have the buddy box set up next time.
Joe, you could have hugged him gently and had your hands... No.
He is a taller man than me. If I had tried to hug him gently and control that plane, I would not have been able to see the plane.
Yeah, right.
It works with an 8-year-old.
I know, right? Yeah, it does. It works with kids.
A grown man, I'm not so sure about.
That just gets awkward.
I'm taller than
especially
my old
your
man.
father-in-law.
Yeah, I'm taller than my old man. I am not taller than my father-in-law.
Fair enough.
So anyway, we had to talk about repairs to this app, but advancing forward from that, because I ended up putting the Spitfire up for a little bit longer and flying it some more. So advance to today. You and I go out fly, and we can talk about it here. Is I took the Vulture out to fly. Now I've been building the Vulture since the build night. 2 weeks ago?
Yep,
3 weeks
the 12th, I believe, was the day.
Just a clarification.
It was almost exactly 2 weeks ago.
I wasn't there. It was Matt and Joe.
Yes.
It was Matt and Joe.
You were not here for the flight.
Okay, I'm just clarifying. Just want to make sure.
Yeah, Joe and I went out today.
Okay.
And we flew our HangarRC planes that we've been building over the last couple of weeks. Again, I think both of us were doing some sort of work 2 nights ago. If you were joining the build night, you probably saw glimpses of it. But yeah, so Joe flew the Vulture today.
Mm-hmm. I did. Made in the Vulture today, and I want to go ahead and put it out there. We'll kind of why we're doing this interview, why we're doing a review on these at later in the episode. Sam had reached out to us and asked us to check out these planes, and so he sent us each a kit to build and review. So that's what Matthew and I were doing today. We had built them. I was still building it today. We were up crazy late last night, finishing it up today, and we went out and flew them. So got a chance to fly the Vulture, and the maiden flight was rocky, and it acted rather tail heavy, which then we ended up strapping some extra batteries on the front end to shift the CG forward, and then it flew great. The first flight ended up nose down in the baseball field. It was just real squirrely, constantly wanting to know, like, Matt, I think at one point...
It was like a high alpha flight, is what it looked like.
At one point, that Vulture was hanging, had to have been like 60 degrees pointed up, just hanging there in the air, like, I'm trying, dude.
And I'm giving him like, why don't you try this? And why don't you try that? And Joe's like, shut up, Matt. I'm doing everything I can.
Dang backseat driver.
I know. I was trying to help, only because I've been there.
It's like when you're learning to water ski, right? Everybody knows how to do it, and they're shouting at you being drugged through the water.
Just let go. Just let go.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I have to get this. No, it really, the way it was flying reminded me very much of like the Nutball, which is just a straight out high alpha thing where you can kind of hang it by the prop all day long,
Yeah,
and that's what it looked like.
No, it's
no, it was very tail heavy, and at that point, but it was flyable tail heavy, which is a good sign. That means you're really close.
So I think the reason that I didn't have the porpoising effect that we've seen with the other planes that I've built there too, and I just have a thing that planes that I build start out tail heavy. My glider was tail heavy. The Fogey started out tail heavy. The Spitfire was tail heavy. Now this was tail heavy. So I've just got to.
Joe, I'm gonna buy you a 2200 milliamp 3-cell battery. That's apparently what everything is built for. When you put those in, everything balances.
Everything just works. Joe,
Apparently.
you need a shirt
crazy.
that says "I'm tail heavy."
Yes.
Oh no!
So
I'm gonna make
just a
that.
picture of a peacock.
We're gonna make
Just a
that. We're
picture
gonna
of a
put it on our
peacock?
store.
There
We're
we
gonna
go.
do that
Nice.
just for you, Joe.
So yeah, and I think the only reason I wasn't having the porpoising effect, that nose up, nose down, nose up, nails, that situation that you get into when it's tail heavy, is because there was such a strong prevailing headwind. Was the only thing probably that kept it from not porpoising. Because you remember, like, it was just hanging, not going anywhere, just hanging out up there.
Yeah,
fair enough.
So we ended up we ended up bringing it down. It came down of its own accord when the only thing I can figure is that it lost signal from the transmitter. And I think, and Matthew, you're planning on editing video, but I think I said, I had a brownout, but it was not. I think brownouts when power goes out. I just completely lost control of the plane, and the throttle went to 0. I had no control surfaces, nothing. And it ended up, nose down, poop, right into the baseball field.
Right, and that was not you. Like looking at that, like that, it was flying in a certain manner, and then it wasn't.
Yeah, suddenly it just
it was not your doing. It was not the plane, and I'm like, oh, that's a connection issue. Like crud.
Yeah. And that
thankfully it didn't land into that puddle.
Right. So we were just talking earlier. It was like, okay, everything's kind of drying out because it had been raining like crazy the day and night before. And I guess it just worked out that I took so long today to get everything finalized that it mostly dried out. But I walked out to the baseball field, which is a good ways out there, and it's like right beside 3 giant puddles out with the baseball field. It's like, huh. So fortunately, pick it up, kind of readjust some things. Had to replace the prop, get the wing back on straight. It didn't, like, it kind of frayed some edges, but it didn't bow or break anything. So, no. Matt, we strapped some batteries.
It held up well.
We strapped some batteries on the front and relaunched it. And I ended up adjusting because I ended up having some nose up tendency in the horizontal stabilizer when I put the control, tightened the nut down on the control surface wire. So fixed those issues, relaunched, got it trimmed out, and then she flew like a champ. It was very enjoyable. Once I got her up, got her trimmed out, and you were asking me like, does it feel like the Fogey? And Kinda, but the Fogey just had so much. It had the undercamber nature that it was so much drag. This plane like moved faster through the air, and because it's not, it's got the undercamber tips, but the underside of the wing is full. And it just flew nice once you got it trimmed out and flying right, and then it was hanging at like 50% throttle. It was just doing its thing up there, and you saw me take it way up there. Once I got really comfortable with it, I started taking it way up there, and then you were trying to get your micro up and flying, and so it as you had like put yours down further out, as you were walking out, I was doing some low passes over you and buzzing the tower as it were, and ended up bringing it in, setting it down, and we kind of debriefed on that, and then we got your 7 out in the air. The tragedy of today, then moving on off of that, was when we then flew the Spitfires, and I won't spend a whole lot of time on this one, but because we didn't have much flight time with them, got the Spitfires in the air, flying around. You let me borrow your CPAC motor, thank you, and I just gotten a 4-cell battery in the mail, so that was awesome. So much power behind that bad boy. Got in the air, going up, getting kind of squirrely, but yeah, as I'm getting the feel for it again, and then with the head and tailwind as we're going around, and got it a good ways out at distance, and I was like, man, I'm trying to get you were saying, hey Joe, work on bringing it back in. I'm like, I'm trying, Matt. All of a sudden I can't control this plane anymore. And it was probably like 4 or 5 minutes into flight, and I just, again, signal loss, and it dumped. Sadly, I'm not proud of this one. My stomach's been in knots about it since, but I ended up dumping it into the neighborhood that was beside the school, and I had to go and look for it, and it ended up, fortunately, being between 2 sets of privacy fences. It was like the access road behind behind houses or in between streets of houses. Anyway, but the Spitfire had broken in half. Tail section just wrapped around, wing was busted. So that was the tragedy of that. But we had a really good day of flying.
Okay, so what I flew this past couple weeks, I'm trying to think if I did any flying with the boys, and I don't think. I think what I ended up doing is I finished up my micro build for. So I got really excited when Sam, you showed us kind of what you guys were offering, and on a whim, I printed out the micro size of the 7 and the Vulture. And when I did that, I put those together with the Dollar General stuff, and I finished those up over this last week, and I decided I wanted to try to fly them, see how they flew. The micro size 7, I got out, flew really good, really sensitive. So I had to bring my throws down significant. Maybe I keep putting the throws on the high level. I don't know. So once I dialed back the throws, it flew like fun. It was a lot of fun. It was tiny, but it seemed to fly pretty floaty. It had enough power to do loops and to rolls and kind of go around, but it wasn't like screaming through the sky or anything like that. I was running an 1806 with a quadcopter motor, like a 5x3x3, with a 4500 3-cell or 550 or 450 milliamp 3-cell kind of for weight. So that's generally the power setup, because again, it's micro. So
and this is the first micro that I'm aware of that somebody's done that small. There's been a couple guys that have done bigger ones by a little bit, but
sure.
But this is when I saw yours, I'm like, wow, it's cute.
It's adorable.
It's adorable, yeah. And so
you have to go up an octave.
And we'd love to see. Yeah, you do have to go up an octave. And we'd love to see people, part of our community, which we call the Squadron, affectionately. We love to see their builds, but this is the first time I've seen that I know of, at least that anybody hasn't shared with us, that has built that small. Yeah. And they're gorgeous. They're beautiful.
Yeah, and we've been doing this in the show, it's kind of like semi-secret. When we get this episode published, I'll make sure that I post what I did with those. I also took the Vulture and did the same thing. Again, it was like using a half of a sheet of the stuff from the Dollar General, and it only took 6 printed plan sheets. It was like really easy and quick, and I had it done in a couple hours. And then it reminded me, because I'd been working on the Viking. I still kind of am. Uh, the Vance Viking, the Viking S3B, the ducted fan jet, and it's all in the finishing stages, right? So it's not that stage where you have a plan, you cut it out, and you go, boy, I hope this turns out like I want. And you put it together and you go, yeah, like 2 hours later, like this is exactly what I want, or that's really close. Let me fix that. It's, those builds are all at the end stage where it's like, well, how do I get this landing gear to work the way I want? Or why is this deflection not, this is binding here? Or, I wonder if I could get this so the canopy sits a little bit better, kind of stuff. And so I really like, that's part of what I love about the foam board builds is, in an hour, you've got something that you turn into an airplane, like from flat sheets. It's awesome. So
For sure.
I realized when I built that on the whim, knowing that I think I put those together and we're cutting them out the day that we received your packages.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, cool, neat. Because at that point I was kind of checking out what you had. I'm like, oh, the plans are free. This is fantastic. Let me take a quick look. Let me print them out half size, and we'll see what we can do. Like, what's the worst that could happen? It doesn't fly well because it's a micro. Like,
And I can't help you out at that
tough.
size.
No, micros are really tough because when you reduce the wing dimensions by half, it's an exponential thing. So you're basically reducing the actual load capacity by a quarter. So I have to take whatever load you've designed it for, which I wasn't really sure what it was, and it had to be a quarter of that. And so to do that, 9-gram motors need to be, what's a quarter, like 3 grams,
Right.
maybe.
Right.
The battery, if we're using a 2200, well, yeah, definitely need a quarter of that. The motors, you want enough power, but you don't want too much torque, because with that much size difference, it's really going to start affecting things. So when you scale things down, it gets a little different. Like, there's a couple components that you can use that really help the scaling out. And it turned out like it worked out really well. And I think it's like the APAC motors that Flight Test uses, the 1806 quad motors, really, with the 5x3x3 prop, and that like a 12 amp ESC. That is a great system for that micro size. And again, I think it was like, it's half size, so
it's tiny.
About 18 inches. Yeah, it's like 18 inches wingspan total.
It's insane.
It was really fun. It was just like one of those exercises. I wonder how this will work. I wonder if it'll build about the same. I wanted to see what the differences were. I wanted kind of a sneak peek as to what I was going to get, what you were sending, really. But the other half is I wanted to see how it came, and I wanted to see, does it build any different? It shouldn't, because I was building like exactly half scale with the foam, half scale with the plans. Like, it should build identical, and it turned out it did.
Oh, and it gave you a practice run, which was kind of nice.
It did, yeah. And I also wanted to see, like, well, this is me figuring it out as just a random builder who finds your plans and just does what they think is the best. That's one experience, right? And then to take your plans and take your kit and then go and watch the videos and follow your guides and see what I can learn from that and see what the differences are in the experiences are.
Right.
That was part of what I wanted to check out. But I really love the Seven, like what and the Vulture. I want to see it fly. So I put those together during the week, and I gave them each maiden flights. The Seven flew pretty much like I hoped it would fly. It was about 75% throttle. It was flying well. It could do different maneuvers. And unfortunately, I haven't been able to replicate that success. Part of it is because I'm not wrenching down, or I'm not using Loctite or something like that, but the nut keeps coming off. And Joe and I experienced it today. I rev that motor up and all of a sudden the propeller's the fastest thing moving across the field. The plane's in place, but the propeller's out.
So, just because this is a noob show, a side note on your Loctite, make sure you get the blue Loctite, not the blue bottle, but the blue in color, the liquid itself inside.
Right. The red bottle with the blue, which is temporary.
Yes.
As opposed to the blue bottle with the red liquid,
which makes no sense
is
whatsoever.
permanent. No, why they didn't make one a green bottle or something is beyond me. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for that noob tip. Fortunately, I've never bought the blue bottle with the red liquid, so I can't confuse them on my bench, thankfully. That's another noob tip. Don't buy the other stuff, because then you don't have to worry about confusing it. Anyway, so I got a chance to fly the 7, and again, I got it to fly pretty well. I built the Vulture, and I brought that out to my flying field one evening. I was trying to get them all to fly, and leading up to this past week, by today, I guess, I had 3 different attempts during the week to do a maiden flight on all of the 2 micro builds in the 7. And if I only I knew a podcast that went over what should be in your go bag and how to set it up.
When was that one? I'm not quite sure.
I don't know. I think that was last episode?
Actually,
it was,
I even
Matthew.
Covered. Matt, would you forget your head if it wasn't attached?
I covered often. Yes, often. And I proved it this week. I swear to God. I forgot the LiPo bag one day, and that had all the full-size batteries, which means I wasn't flying the 7. The other one, let's see.
The full-size 7.
It was the full-size 7. So the micro size, it was just a comedy of errors where, on the micro, when I flew the 7, it was out of control, and I cartwheeled it, and the motor mount came loose, which is really kind of hard to get at to kind of re-glue back. But it's also kind of wedged in there by the front cowl underpiece. And so that day I was just like, let's see if it continues to fly. Because what's the worst that could happen? It comes out of the front, right? I'm like, if it comes out of the front, that's what's going to happen anyway. Okay, well, whatever. I'll just turn it off and then we'll go home. Well, I flew that successfully for 3 or 4 loops with a loose motor. I was like, oh man, this is going to be a great plane. I can't wait to fly it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Remember
the full size.
to
I was really
glue your
excited.
motor in.
Yeah, glue the motor in. Do it before you close the cowl, for the love of God. That's all. That's my advice.
Follow the build video. 4 words.
Yes, exactly. No, I like to do it from the back and just sort of figure it out.
Just play the video in reverse.
Exactly.
If you play the video backwards. I'm just kidding. Totally kidding.
No, right. It basically tells you how to build the plane, unbuild the plane. All right, so. After I built that and had those experiences, the first day was a complete fail. Everything I tried, I didn't have a thing to tighten a nut. I didn't have each plane was missing something that was just asinine that I didn't have with me. It was all things I should have had with me and I didn't. Mm-hmm. So, okay, pack it up, go home. Next day, I come back out and I'm like, this doesn't work. Darn it. I think I had tanked the launch on the Micro 7 and something happened where I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to fly. But I flew the Vulture and I flew that up and down the field a little bit, but it was cranked at full speed. So that is an 1806. I'm using a 5x3 prop with a 442 cell because, again, it's on 2 cells. So what I didn't want to do was overcook the 6 amp plush ESC that's in it. And again, I'm using a 6 amp because that's a couple grams lighter. And that build, as much, at micro scale, as much weight as you can possibly save. Honestly, if I could go back and do it, I'd probably cut holes in the back of the thing and cover it with very, very thin tape just so I could get less weight in there. If I were to rebuild the micro, I would probably do as many lightning techniques as you could possibly get away with to have a solid airframe, just because it performs much better. But I had a great time flying it up and down the field. Again, it was 90 to 100% throttle just pegged. And just very minute controls. It was really touchy. And Joe, you saw it today.
Yeah.
When we flew it again today, like it was really touchy until I almost like barely, I just didn't even touch the rudder. And I just controlled the elevator and a little tiny bit of rudder, like itty bitty. And this was on like minute throws. And it flew pretty well once I finally remembered, like, don't touch it, Matt. Just let it fly. And that's what I was doing in the field. I had a great time during the week, but I could never. And then I ran out of time to go out and get the full scale. I know what it was. I had the O-ring that kept the prop saver prop on. That busted, and I normally have 2 or 3 of them on my keyring. I didn't have any on that day. And then there was another thing. Something else happened the next day. And I was like, ugh, this is so stupid. Oh, the lipo bag was the next day. And I'm like, how did I miss a lipo bag? Like, the lipo bag.
We've all been there.
Ugh.
We've all been there.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we got out there today. And I had, again, all 3 planes. We tried the Micro 7. And again, that's where the prop came zooming off and the plane stayed still. And I said, rather than get myself worked up over how this isn't working, let's go have fun with all the other planes. We got a lot more here. Joe flew his Vulture, and then I decided, well, let me see if I can get the Micro Vulture. And I forgot how touchy it was, so it took a little bit. But once his battery was starting to beep, and I'm like, hey, it's finally working. So I did like a couple little circuits as he's kind of slowly bringing his in that. All I can think of is it's almost like a cargo plane when it comes in. It seems to come in and it's like looming, like slow, like descent as it comes down to the runway at that angle, right? Like that's how the Vulture comes in. It's just this slow, easy descent, right?
Especially with that
like
headwind.
this little micros. Yeah, especially with the headwind. That helped a lot. But the micro was like kind of zooming as best I could around it. And it's all squirrely and, it was because it's just so touchy on the controls. But it was a lot of fun. We had a little bit of fun with that. And then I was like, okay, everything's cool. Oh, and that was the other thing I did. The 7 full size was built according to your plans and all the stuff. And we'll talk about the build experience later. But one of the things I despise doing is hand launching, because if something doesn't work, you might as well, you're literally throwing your plane into the ground.
For sure.
I
get it.
And it always kills me because I'm like, but the plane is so nice. It's not the plane's fault. Why am I throwing a plane into the ground? So I decided, after looking at some of the other guys who built 7s, one of the guys talked about some landing gear. And so I decided I'm going to make some landing gear for this thing, because looking at the Van R7's page, the Van's RV7 page, like all of the stuff has gear and it's very iconic. I'm like, let me see if I could replicate that. So while Joe was putting his Vulture together today, I got some pliers out and some of the the 1/8-inch steel wire that comes from the hardware store, and I started wrenching on it. And then I'm like, but I need this to detach, because Joe and I were all 4 of us. So my 2 kids and Joe and myself were all piling in my little Yaris, which means
nice.
Which means there's no room for planes. Normally I have my front seater. There's 1 seat usually I can put planes in, but I'm like, oh shoot, I can't do that. I'm like, well,
which kids riding on top?
That's what I was thinking. Like, well, maybe one could run alongside. Like, no, no. So we had 2 Spitfires. We had the full size 7. We had the Vulture, and then we had the 2 micros. Right? And I'm like,
a lot of planes in the trunk of that car.
It's a lot of planes. It's a good sized trunk, but at the same point, it's a small car. I'm like, if I have this landing gear permanently attached, we're done. Because 3 of those planes are permanently attached wings. The Spitfire, the wing doesn't come off, right? And the 7, the way it's set up, the wing doesn't come off. It's a lot stronger of a build that way. And if you're building any of those 2 planes, like, just glue the thing on. Like, you'll be happier for it. So I took the thing and I made little clips that insert into the plane, and then you basically put and clip the gear onto it, and it keeps it. It keeps it solid. And we were checking it out today, and I plan on posting at least a little bit of information about it And if you can do this, this is amazing. And I'll tell you what, the Seven, the way it's designed with the cowl firewall, like the double foam board near the front of the plane, I was able to use that to kind of anchor two of the clips, and that really was kind of instrumental in making sure that this landing gear stayed on. Now I think you could fit that to other kinds of planes too. But it just seemed to work out really well for this plane. And so I was able to take the landing gear off, put the Seven flat, put the two Spitfires on top. The Vulture's wing comes off, so you kind of sit it in the back like a good polite plane in the back, and then the other was kind of fit in there. And because we had to fit Joe's go box. By the way,
Oh, yeah.
Joe's go box. If you didn't listen to last episode, is everything he
The
owns.
Tupperware or the Rubbermaid.
And extra today because we were maidening. So I had the battery charger. I had a new inverter I just bought. There was the glue gun in there. There was multiple rolls of tape. There were everything in case something went wrong in the field. It was in this go. It was spilling out.
Right. And of course I had my kids with me, so I'm like, well, maybe we'll get a chance to buddy box. So I've got my transmitter, I've got their transmitter, I've got the other transmitter because one of those builds is hooked up to the old receiver. And needless to say, my go bag is also giant, so I'm like stuffing it between the kids. Kids are plastered up against the windows, going help.
It's only an hour to the field.
Anyway.
It's only an hour.
Well, thankfully we went to the local high school, so it wasn't that far. But that would be hilarious. I should have thought about saying that to him. Anyway, so we went out, we brought the Seven out, and so I flew that around. I got a really good chance to give that a go. I tried inverted flight and didn't crash it. I don't know how I managed to do that.
It's because the Seven handles inverted like a dream.
Yeah, it's a 3D wing, right? It's a symmetrical airfoil, I should say. And consequently, so when you go upside down, you really don't have to do a whole lot to have it fly almost the same manner. So it was a lot of fun to do that and give that a try and fly it around. It's maneuverable. I think the setup I had as far as the engine and the prop might have been a little undersized from what's recommended, but it still flew really well, and we had a lot of fun with it. Then we flew the Spitfires, and much like last week, it was silhouette flying the Spitfires, which is like, hey, let's get a plane that looks symmetrical, going, coming, upside down, and right side up, and let's fly it as a silhouette. Oh, geez, I don't want it to be, but we had big dreams. They didn't quite come true today, but we did have a lot of fun kind of flying them in the air. I think we enjoyed them. And Joe, I swear I'm going to be done. You're going to get your plane back.
Okay.
Like, I know you don't. I know you're like, it's never going to work, man. That's just all busted now. And I know how you're feeling, but like, I glued it back. The fuse is straight.
Right.
I think it would be.
So you guys know what happened. It broke. I covered that, and I was like, man, I was really looking forward to having this plane as a regular, but now it's busted. I'm not gonna fix that. Like, wrap tape around it. Come on. So Matthew said, well, I'll take it. I'll repair it. I'll give you some servos to replace the ones that are in it, and then it'll be mine, and the boys can
I'll fly it.
Yeah, like, I'll have a free Spitfire. And I'm like, well, if you can get it flying right, go for it, because like it might.
That's on you, buddy. You want that headache? It's all yours.
Yeah. So like, I'm not expecting it back now that you've taped it and glued it and all that, but if it does fly, like, it's up to you, but I'm not expecting it back.
If I get it flying next time we see each other, I'll make sure I want you to have it back. I want you to have a plane that you can enjoy and rely upon, and that the Spitfire is just one of those. So that's our flying stories for the week, I think, right? Like I said, I kind of breezed over the Seven because I want to get into a little bit more about how it flew in our review of it. So that's why I'm kind of leaving that light.
Are you planning to cover your half battery charge secondary flight attempt during the review, or can I at least chuckle at that now?
You can chuckle. Oh yeah. Wait. When I landed, and I'm like, oh look, it's like halfway.
Right.
And then I decided to try to take off again.
Mm-hmm. And it was like the little Seven
I'll
that
talk
could.
about it.
The little 7 that could. That's funny.
Okay, so the way it took off, like it doesn't have a lot of power. Like I was pegged at 90 to 100% for most of the flying. And again, it flew well. I enjoyed it, but it did not have an abundance of power. Like when we have the Spitfires, they've got more than enough to just jam out all night long. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, this is awesome. So this was flying, again, like we like to say, it's flying scale. So I had to get a lot of runway speed, but it would only get...
and just to clarify, when you're saying that it didn't have a ton of powers, because you were using a motor you had that ended up being kind of low on the KV, and you didn't have the prop that was actually designed, that plane was built for.
I think I had the prop, but again, the motor didn't have the amount of KV, so it wasn't spinning as fast as it should have. If I had the motor that we could have used. But again, that's not on. That's my choice.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure we pointed that one out.
and I thought it was going to be fine. Anyway, it turns out it was fine enough to give it a go and give it a try. So as I'm flying this, like it's got to get enough speed to just get enough to lift it up, and it's really like just barely getting enough. But add to that, it's getting drag from the grass, which again, because school isn't really in session, they're only cutting it just enough to make sure it's not a weed monster. You know what I mean? So like there's a lot of drag on the wheels as I'm trying to push it across the field and get it up in the air and starting to get enough speed. It's lifting up, you know, the tail is coming up off the ground, and it's flying, but it's flying with the wheels pretty much touching the ground, and I'm trying to get more speed, but the wheels are slowing it down. And I'm like, I'm trying to push it so it can get just enough to kind of get up off of the grass and maybe get enough speed to actually start climbing.
And it does start to.
This is, yeah, but that requires a lot of space. And so here I am, I'm chugging it towards the one side of the field, and that's where the fence is. And I'm like, I got plenty of room. I'm sure it'll be going fast enough. It'll be great. I'll pull it back on the elevator and we'll be good. And so I'm like, but I pull back in the elevator. I'm like, oh no, I'm slowing down. Like I need to keep it level to get enough speed to be able to pull up. And meanwhile, I'm heading at like, it's literally inches off the ground. It's flying
ground effect
along the ground, almost, right? And it's flying along the ground and it's heading right for that fence. And it is not getting any altitude at all because it's still hitting some grass and slowing down and just barely. And I'm like, come on, baby, a little bit higher, a little bit. And Joe's like, dude, you're going to hit that fence. I'm like, I might. We'll see. We might have 7 hamburger tonight, you know? And so I'm like, come on, almost there. And it felt, I forgot, it felt very much like that Indiana Jones moment where you're just like, and oh, there we go. And it just pulled enough to clear the fence and turn. And I'm like, I can't turn though. It's too low. Like I can't dip a wing. It's going to clip the ground. So I had to fly level and straight and just above the ground, long enough for it to get enough speed to start to really be able to climb. And I was eating up runway space fast. I thought for sure I was going to have to tell you, sorry, Sam, that we had success building, we had success flying. I can give you a review.
And then I put it in a fence.
But I'm never going to fly.
I'm sad.
And then I put it in a fence
Good
and
job.
made it hamburger.
Good job.
Well done.
Yeah, but no, it turns out I ended up just missing it. I kind of came up and around, and I said, Joe's like, you should probably land. I'm like, yeah, you're probably right, Joe. So, and it was still only like eye level. It never really got terribly high. So I just I eased back on the throttle and let it come back to the ground near the goalposts that were pretty much right there. So I forgot. So yeah, so I learned that's exactly where the limit is for that plane. So
yeah, well, they all have them.
I learned something today.
Yep.
Exactly. So I think that pretty much ends. That's I guess the last thing we need to talk about for the flight. I know over the last couple weeks since we met last, we had a build party, and that was part of where we were kind of building the products that were provided by the HangarRC. And we had a lot of our listeners and community that are on our Discord server kind of join in with their planes, whatever they were working on, just chatted about planes and had a good time. I know, Sam, you came on and said, hey.
Yes. I really enjoy those. That's an excellent idea. I really enjoy that.
I'm glad. I know we do.
A lot of fun.
That's for sure. I think we're planning on doing it probably in about mid-October, and we're going to do another one in mid-November, I think. So,
Awesome.
and one of those, I think it's going to be the November 14th one, I think is the one we're roughly planning out. We'll solidify it by next episode. We'll call it the HangarRC Build Night. And that's one where we're going to recommend, just go out to the HangarRC, check out their website, see if there's a kit or a plan set. All of your plans are free
Yes.
if they want to download them as a PDF, right?
Absolutely.
But go over there, check out what they've got, what kind of planes they have available. Download something you find interesting and exciting to build. Give it a go. Get your plans ready. Order a kit, and that's part of why we're doing it in November. That gives you plenty of time to take a look. And see what you like and place an order. Sam, you said that the shipping goes out within a handful of days of the order, and it's usually 2 or 3 day shipping, so it should arrive within about a week.
Yes. We try to ship everything out within 2 days. 1 day for the order to come in and be processed, and the second day to ship. And then most places in the country, we ship 2 day. Sometimes on the far East Coast, 2 day shipping's not available. So, yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. And so the HangarRC has offered a discount code for anybody who's looking to put together some supplies from their site.
Yes.
For that build night. It is ARCN-BN1. That's all lowercase, and that gives them 10% off the entire store through November 30th, 2020.
Yep.
And we'll have that code linked in the description. So
as well as the link.
Yep, link to the HangarRC website. And again, that's in preparation for what we're doing as the HangarRC Build Night, where we'll be building. Everybody, like Matt and I, will be building another HangarRC plane. I don't know. I might try to build the 7 this time, or I may build the Vulture again just to do it again and go through that process again. Now that I've got a better understanding and what's going on, and I'll talk about that in the review.
Right.
Exactly.
Cool.
And I might try the Wasp. Do we have any listener comments? I know before we usually get into the meat and potatoes, we like to see if there's any listener comments. Do we see anything? Joe?
I've been in the Discord, but I haven't seen anything. What have you got?
I know there was a lot of mentions of the forest fires that are going on in the Northwest and California, and so for all those people who are out there, please be safe and stay safe. Don't be a hero or anything like that. I know a friend of mine picked up a plane, I guess, and had to fly through a lot of the smoke through there. So as it continues to do what it does, just be careful.
Amen. Amen, Matt. We get a lot of that smoke, and we have a lot of forest fires in Utah here, and so I'm living it, man.
Yeah. So just for those of you, that's some love sent from us.
Thank you.
I know one of our community members gave us he was out there named Squirreltail. He ended up going out to a flying event in the past couple weeks, and he shared with us some of the really neat large-scale 3D flying that he and his friends did. And we'll see if he doesn't mind, maybe we'll see about linking to that. But it was a really neat thing to see him and his buddy doing like kind of synced up 3D hover flying and pattern flying, just some crazy stuff. I was like, wow.
It was, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like planes don't work that way.
Yeah. Not unless you've got some crazy skill. And I'll tell you what, kudos to was it Sam and his buddy for doing that kind of flying. It's awesome stuff to see. Not that Sam, the different Sam, but it's still awesome stuff. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So as a proper introduction, Sam Platt, you are the founder of the HangarRC, which is your
wait. Before we go, Sam, you've got 10 seconds to introduce yourself and go.
My name is Sam Platt. Yes, I'm the founder of the HangarRC, and Yeah, I fly airplanes. And I have a family, and I'm on the show.
Nice. Okay, cool. So for the main topic, we're here to talk to Sam Platt, who is the founder of the HangarRC. And we're here to talk. We want to know more about who you are, Sam. And before we start talking about the HangarRC, so what I'd love to know, how we'd like to start, is what was your first experience in the hobby?
My first experience in the hobby, I would have to say it started back in high school. I had a fascination for flight, and I always saw, and I guess I can't say always, but I did see occasionally, people out there with control line airplanes, and I thought, man, that'd be cool if I could get one of those. But I grew up on a farm, never could probably afford it, and I knew it was kind of expensive. So really, I started by because it was what I could afford. I started with Estes model rockets. They're a great way to get into aerospace, into flying. So what I'd do is I'd buy the kits, obviously, and I'd build the rockets. And then eventually I started upgrading them. I started building my own. But for the most part, I stuck to the Estes kits. But I started upgrading my transmitter, called transmitter. My I guess it was a controller, a launch controller that as opposed to just a single button, I had one that kind of looked like an RC transmitter, but you had one button that would, when you're plugged in, when you had your key in, it'd beep, 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 and then when you push the one button, it would go solid like a countdown, and then you push the other one and launch the rocket off. But that's where I got started, and I actually pulled one of my really good friends in high school in, and he started building and flying rockets, model rockets as well. And so that's kind of where I got started in, I guess, aviation in general. But fast forward. So go ahead.
I was going to say, so how about when you got into Model RC aviation?
Right. So fast forward, from high school till I had been married for 14, 15 years maybe. So fast forward 20, 25, 30 years, somewhere around there. And I used to work at a real estate marketing firm for my real job, if you will. And there was a coworker there who had these foam board airplanes, and he was, he's all, you need to come out and fly with me, because he knew I had an interest in aviation. He said, you got to come out, Sam, you got to come out. And I was like, oh, okay, this is cool, but I don't have time. And I, at that time I had thought, oh, he must be spending a fortune. And, me and my wife with a young family I won't say we're strapped, but you have budgets, so you got to keep to.
Mm-hmm.
And so finally one day on lunch, because that's when he'd go fly, we were down the street from a low park, and he took me out, and man, it was awesome. And at that time he had his FPV headset, and he let me put it on while he flew around line of sight, and man, it hooked me. And so on top of that, I'm a graphic designer by trade, and I had been working with foam board for 20 years. And so I not to toot my own horn, but I was a master at foam board, because we had to use it in school. We learned how to use it in school, and as a graphic designer, you're constantly using foam board to mat your projects on and whatnot, and make presentations. And so it kind of felt natural. Once I learned it was foam board and Dollar Tree foam board or Adams Ready board, it kind of all felt natural to me. It kind of just fell in my lap. So he finally convinced me, and I went home and talked to my wife, said, hey, I'd really like to try this out. And I'm kind of a master of all trades, or what's the saying?
Jack of all trades, master of none. So you know how I know? I'm that guy.
So yeah, I had kind of had that, and I had other hobbies. I was a big time geocacher at the time. If you don't know what that is, it's a whole nother conversation, but it's you use multi-million-dollar satellites to find Tupperware in the woods. And so, my wife just looked at it. She's all, well, okay. And like I said, they weren't expensive, but they, to get started off, you have to buy a transmitter and receivers and motors and batteries and servos and, yada, yada, yada. And so it's, it's a couple $100 investment at first, right? After you get the transmitter and receiver, you're, however, a couple pieces of foam, couple bucks, and, whatever battery or motor you have laying around. And so I went home to the wife and I said, I'd really like to do this. This is something I'm really interested in. And she says, okay, go ahead. And so I ordered my first motor and tried my first transmitter, first of all, which happened to be a Turnigy 9X.
Hi.
I was gonna ask you which one that was. Yeah.
Yes, Turnigy 9X. And to be honest, for a beginner transmitter, it's phenomenal. I mean, you get 9 channels. It really is. It's a great beginner transmitter. And I ordered a battery, and my very first plane I built, believe it or not, was the Storch, the FT Simple Storch. And
I was going to ask you, what was your first build? Like, what did you...
That was my first build. My first RC plane I had is way back before I knew foam board could be turned into RC planes. We had our second child, Cade. And we gave him 1 year for, maybe he wasn't even born yet, but it was one of those air hogs, little whatevers. And you threw it up and it would just basically, it was a powered chuck lighter, if you will, more or less. And so anyway, besides that, the Storch was my very first plane. And I'll be honest, I didn't succeed with it very well. I had this guy at work.
I was going to say, how did it go, right?
It didn't go well. It really didn't. And I vowed, because this is my personality, I vowed I'd never give up on a plane. Well, I gave up on the Storch. Without my friend at work, or the guy I worked with, I couldn't get it on the ground. I mean, he'd get off the ground and in the air, and I'd take the controls and I'd be fine. But I only ever got it off the ground myself, like once or twice. And so I was like, this is just not the plane for me. So then I started building the Flight Test Tiny Trainer. And why I was building and I guess why I was building the Storch for that matter, me and my wife were all, it's foam board. This thing's never going to get off the ground. It's never going to fly. You can't turn a flat sheet of material into something that actually flies. And so... and so anyway, we did, and my first couple flights with I followed the beginner series, and I'd chuck it and try to glide it down and land it, and chuck it again and glide it down and land it. And I remember being outside my house. So my house is on a cul-de-sac, and the person across the street is their side yard, and they have a lot more grass there, and so that's where I first started. I should have known better, but I'd chuck it there and let it glide down, and voila, okay, I got this. And then finally I got up the nerve to turn the battery on, or turn the motor on, and I think...
Wait, in the neighborhood?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, because I'm like, oh, okay, so you're like on his house, you're like, go, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. What happened?
Yeah, actually, I can't wait to hear this one.
I can tell you, I did do it in the neighborhood at one point. That didn't...
Not advised.
No,
not
at all. But
for you listening,
do not do this.
That's probably not the best.
No.
Yeah.
And I was stupid, and I chucked it in the neighborhood, and it was because I live in a cul-de-sac, and there's kind of another cul-de-sac-ish off to the side where there's a vacant lot, and they're not very big lots. Okay. I mean, maybe a quarter to half acre, and
sure, yeah.
I'm like, I can just
it's
put
good
this
enough
up.
To be in trouble with.
Well, I think I came home for something. We were at a party, and I came home, and I'm like, I got to get my fix in. And so I just chucked it.
So wait, are you saying would you qualify yourself as a foam board plane addict?
That's kind of an understatement, I think. I
think
I can't see beyond it at this point.
I know, right?
No, anyway, so another story, kind of a side story. I did do that in my neighborhood, ended up tanking it into the concrete. Luckily, I know better now. I should have never done it, because if I'd have hit a car or window or a house or whatever, but I thought, I got to get my fix in. Okay. And that was a tiny trainer, by the way. So anyway.
Okay. So you took this tiny trainer when you first turned on the motor. You took it out to field or whatever it was. What was your experience with that?
Probably like most people's experience. The plane went up and down and up and down, and it was not a smooth flight whatsoever. But I got it in the air, and I had a little experience. This was before I knew simulators existed. I had little experience with, when I took the Storch up, my buddy at work, he, would fly it around and
Right.
I'd grab the controller and fly it around for a little bit. So I kind of knew the basics, but man,
And you knew what it was supposed to do.
yes, but it wasn't pretty by any stretch of the imagination. But I have a video of that first flight, and I'll have to go back and find it. But man, I was ecstatic because I was flying around our local field. I still fly at to this day, our local junior high, and man, it was it was like everybody's flight. I didn't have any expo set up, so you're cranking on the sticks, and the plane's going up and down and up and down and up and down, but I was in heaven. I was in the air. And it just is, it's one of those feelings that you're like, I did it. Oh my gosh, it actually flew. I took this $2 airframe and it's in the air. And I love that experience, that aha moment when you see someone new fly. And I don't know if you guys, Joe, I'm sure you've had this, you get your first plane in the air and you're just like, man, this is cool.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what happened with the Delta. It was a mess, but he looked at me like, get the glue out. Let's do it again.
And it is. It's a hot mess, it wasn't pretty, but it was so cool. And
so is that where you say you caught the bug, or was it something else that you're like, oh yeah, I am so.
Oh yeah, it was all down.
Like I was already kind of excited, but dang, I'm never going.
It was all downhill from there. It really was. And since then, I'll be honest, I built. I would dare say I built hundreds of tiny trainers. Not 100, but I built tons of those little things.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've been building a lot of planes. At what point did you start designing planes?
Skins or planes themselves?
I guess I should add planes themselves.
Okay, so the skins kind of came along in the middle of me designing, building planes and designing airframes. They kind of came in the middle of there, but it was a year. It had to be 2 years ago. So the HangarRC launched officially March 5th of 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And so we officially launched March 5th of 2019. And that's when we had already had a year before then when we were designing and, trying to go through this whole concept of we can, offer these planes to people that we're designing. And so I guess it was in, March of sometime of 2018 is when I really started realizing that, oh, hey, I can design an airframe, which is a weird concept to me because I'm not a rocket scientist.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just an average guy that loves to build airplanes. And so I realized that, if I could pick a design and kind of with the Vulture, it was my first design. And I went out there and did some research on what type of airframe I wanted to build. Cause I'm seeing all these cool jets. And I knew I wasn't there yet. I'm seeing all these cool, all these airframes. So I had to pick something simple. And I went down the rabbit hole like we all do on the internet about the golden era of RC flight. Back when they used to have the competitions to see how high your plane would go, and they would lose airframes up over mountains and stuff. And so I got looking at those designs and I'm like, those are really cool. Just because I kind of am a sucker for vintage stuff. Like, I guess not necessarily vintage stuff, but vintage design, being a graphic designer. I love designing vintage logos and whatnot. So I started looking at these old vintage planes. I'm like, those are really cool. And then once I learned that they all basically had polydihedral and they flew basically hands off, I'm like, that's the airframe for me. Mm-hmm. So I started doing some research on this one particular airframe that I really, really liked, called the Buzzard Bombshell. And it was an old stick and tissue plane. It was old balsa and tissue paper plane or whatever they cover them with.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like the looks of it. And I'm like, man, that's a rad plane. And so I decided, you know what? I'm going to convert that to foam board. So with a lot of research and a 3 view of the buzzard bombshell that I found on Google, the rest is history. And thus we have the Vulture.
Nice. With a couple different skin attachments.
Yes. 3 to be exact. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to like building airplanes and different parts of this hobby, what would you say your strongest piece is? Like for me, I think would be either the design aspect or the build. I'm not the strongest pilot, and there's like electronics are like my nemesis. You know what I mean?
Right.
But all the stuff leading up to that point, I'm good
right.
with. It's all the stuff after that.
all the important stuff. No,
But that's just
yes,
me.
I'm the same way. I think I don't classify myself as an amazing pilot. I enjoy the heck out of it, but I'm not necessarily an amazing pilot. As far as the build, I have grown to love scale flight. I love designing scale airframes. I love when you put up an airframe and it just looks scale in the sky. It looks amazing. And I really guess I like to fly scale as well because I enjoy just getting up there and having a nice, relaxing flight. Makes me really nervous when I'm booking around the sky. And it's fun. It's an adrenaline rush. But that's why I love the Vulture so much. It just, like, hands-off flying, it's just relaxing. And that's kind of where I'm at. And most scale birds are fairly relaxing, right? They're not flying 100 miles an hour, or you're not trying to do 3D type of stuff or you know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm totally a scale guy.
Okay. So at what point did you start deciding you wanted to add graphics to the flight test planes? Again, because that's what you were started with, right?
Yes, for sure. And all credit goes to Josh Bixler and Flight Test, because if it weren't for them and my coworker, I would not be in this hobby, and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. So props to those guys.
Right. Yeah, you wouldn't have went to the local hobby store and said, "Yeah, I'd like to drop $600 on something that may or may not work for me."
No,
no. Right.
My wife would divorce me if I came back and said, "Yeah, I just blew $600 at the hobby shop."
Yeah, I just crashed it too. I think I'm done.
I think like 3-second flight, you know.
Yeah, exactly right. So anyway, I'm sorry.
No,
go ahead.
It's good. So, being a graphic designer, you know, and like I said, I'm a scale guy. I just wasn't satisfied with the plain white foam board planes. I was just like, first of all, my very first tiny trainer I built, I painted with rattle cans. Say it with Krylon. And you know, I actually painted it just like the tiny trainer in the episode when they, the very first one that Flight tested, the episode about the tiny trainer. So it was a red and silver wing and whatnot. But, and I've painted with rattle cans a ton in my life, but it's just not a fun experience. You know, light coats, dry, another coat, dry. And I usually end up rushing the process and then get drips or runs or oversaturate the foam. And I just wasn't happy with it. And plus it didn't look, I couldn't replicate the type of graphics I knew that I was capable of. I mean, I know how to airbrush, but who has time for that? Right. And so,
well, if you love it, I mean, some people love it, and they've got serious talent with it. I'm like, whoa, you did what with what?
Major skill out there for sure. It just, you know,
right. But if you're like me and not that guy,
or if you're like me and willing to put in a little bit of time, but not for the minute details, you grab a can of spray paint.
Right. And and for something that potentially could last 3 seconds in the air, no, I'm not that guy. And so anyway, I go ahead.
No. Go ahead. So you said, so anyway, continue.
So anyway, I decided, I'm like, I'm a graphic designer. I can design these skins. And this was before I knew maybe I was just dumb or whatnot, but it was before I knew that guys like Rasterize were actually doing these types of things, you know. But I'm like, I can do this. This is going to be easy. I have all the equipment. I'm a graphic designer, for crying out loud. And so I designed my first tiny trainer skin. And I designed it like an old-fashioned warbird. I mean, it had pipes coming out. They were all graphical. They weren't actual pipes. Had all the rivets. It had, you know, caution signs where, little caution things saying caution hot, where the motor exhaust would be or where the motor would be, or any hot part. It had little doors. It had numbers on it. Had the Air Force graphic on it. I mean, it was all decked out. And I posted a couple pictures of it online, and people started going nuts. And I'm like going, wow, that's something. And I'm like, that's cool. So my next attempt is I was trying to get another one of my friends into the hobby, which we will call limited success. But I designed him a tiny trainer that's the skin for it and built it for him. And I don't think it's ever seen the air. It's never gotten off the ground. And so I started doing these. And then my son, he's a big Seattle Seahawks fan. And so I designed another tiny trainer with some custom wing tips and a custom nose on it that is a Seattle Seahawks design. And it's really cool. I don't think it's ever gotten off the ground either. It's more of a hanger queen, and it's just in his bedroom hanging on the wall. But it has all the electronics in it. There's nothing stopping us from putting it in the air.
You know, the logos for, like, I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan, but the logos for the Seahawks and the Eagles lend themselves to be part of some plane somewhere.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I did it. And it is. And I've had numerous people, oh, can I have that? I'm like, I really don't want to be sued by the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. We're not commercially releasing this.
But
no thanks.
Anyway, so, and then I got that.
But I know a guy.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. No. Anyway, so go ahead.
And so I started to design these skins for flight test planes. The next one I started working on was a green, like green screen green, Marvel versus DC Comics FT Explorer. Because in the meantime, I had built the FT Explorer and I loved it. My kids loved it because it was a great plane to drop parachutes from, and they love chasing after the parachutes. So
it's a very versatile airframe.
Absolutely.
For sure.
One of my favorites next to the tiny trainer. And so I started designing this Marvel versus DC. So one side of it was going to be all Marvel superheroes, and one side of it was going to be DC superheroes. And the reason why I did it green was I was going to green screen the plane out, so all you would see is the superheroes flying around in the air.
Oh, okay.
Ding, 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 ding.
Okay.
Oh, well, how'd that work out then?
It hasn't yet because I've never finished it.
Well, dang it,
Sam.
Sam.
I know. I need to. I really do. But
that'll be fun though. I'm looking forward to it if you ever do.
I need to get back to it. The problem is I just stopped designing. I got busy with doing my own designs. Anyway,
finally, Wonder Woman has her invisible jet.
That was my exact thought. Believe it or not, and I'm like, how cool would it be if I could take it into my video editing software and green screen out the color of the jet. I mean, all you're gonna see is the superheroes. It'd be kind of cool flying around.
That'd be fun.
Anyway,
nice.
And so that's kind of where I got started. It was with those tiny trainer skins and the Explorer skin, and it really is where my passion and love for this hobby came in. Well, I guess my degree and my real job, my full-time job, what I'm trained in, and my passion for RC flight,
your course
came together.
I was going to say your core skill set.
Yes,
Boy,
yes.
English. You need to learn it.
Yes. Where it came together.
Sorry.
And that it kind of was a natural fit. And thus I'm like, man, this is cool. And people started reaching out to me about my skins and about, what are you doing? How are you doing this? And I'm like, well, if I can do this. And this whole time I was trying to develop my own plane, and kind of a natural step in the hobby, and the Vulture and whatnot. And I'm like, man, this is cool. This is something that nobody out there that I know of is offering complete kits with skins attached. There's plenty, Flight Test offers the kits. There's guys like Grass Dries that offer the skins, but there's not
which is awesome.
Yes, amazing. The guys I've talked to him numerous times. He's an amazing individual and super talented. Yeah. But nobody's putting these two things together.
Right. It would be nice to just say, I want that to look like that when I'm done. Could you just make it happen?
Yes.
Like let's send it here. And that's essentially what the HangarRC kind of does. I mean, you have your own plane designs, at least that you have through the company.
Correct.
And then with that, they always, if you buy a kit, they come with a skin. Is that how it is? Or can you just, how should somebody?
No, you can definitely buy all our,
what can they expect?
All our kits comes with skins, but we also will sell we do sell just the skin. They call it a skinless kit. People can definitely buy it without the skin, just the laser cut foam board.
Okay.
Okay.
And can you order the skin separately without the foam board? Like if you want to basically take the PDF and cut it out and do that part, the hard part on your own, and then order your skins to make it look like it should.
Absolutely. We have what we call skin kits available, and they can definitely order just the kit. And we've had numerous people do that, where they're ordering just the skin and they prefer to, download the free plans and cut out and the skins match up to the free plans, obviously. So yeah. Definitely an option.
Okay. So what models do you have available on the store right now? I know that's going to change through time. But...
Yes, currently, and I know we've been around for about 1.5 years now, but we're trying to make some very, strategic moves. We're not trying to rush into things. We're making sure we have all our ducks in a row. But currently, we have 3 models available. We have the Vulture. The HRC Seven, which is modeled the Vulture is modeled after a Buzzard bombshell. The HRC Seven, which is modeled after the full scale real airplane, the Vans RV7. And that's a whole another story. Maybe we can get into it a little bit later, but it's kind of cool how that whole story came about. And then we have our latest airframe called the Wasp, and it's a kind of a jet style. It's a prop driven, but it's a jet style aircraft. It's modeled after an FA-18 Hornet.
Oh, nice.
And it seems to me when I was looking at the different skins, the Wasp, you've taken a good deal of time to get the great detail. And when I say great detail, I'm talking like panel lines and rivets and things like that. Is that true?
Yes, absolutely. It's a painstaking design process, but it's well worth it. And yes, you do get panel lines, you get the rivets, you get a lot of details that you would never get if you're using a rattle can.
Yeah, exhaust dirt, as it were, and things like that.
Yes, exhaust, right? the black of the exhaust coming back or whatever. Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Now, so do you design the planes yourself, all of them, or is it how do you do the plane designs?
So I've designed the Vulture. That's my design. But there's no way I could do this alone. So I've reached out to some of the best designers around the country, here in the United States, and partnered more or less with them, and have them allow me to release their airframes as a Hangar kit, much like what Flight Test does with their community builds. That's what we've done, is we've partnered with these designers, and they are releasing their airframes exclusively through the HangarRC.
Nice. And so when you get the design, do they come with skins? Like, do they have a skin example for you, or is that where you kind of take it and make it HangarRC, as it were?
Yeah, that's where we take our creativity and make the skins. Typically, they don't come. In fact, none of them have come with skins. But we work very closely with designers. We call them our designers. We work closely with them so that they can have input on what type of skins we do. So, for example, Rick Harlan, who designed the Wasp, he really loves the Blue Angel skin on the F-18 Hornets. And so we worked with him and we designed the skin that represents the Blue Angels. And what's cool about our process and our manufacturing process is we can customize a skin very easily. So for example, with the Wasp, and if you order a Wasp skin kit or just a regular quick kit, you can actually order any one of the 8 Blue Angel skins. So you can order number 1 through 8, depending on which is your favorite Blue Angel skin.
Can you take us through the process of a build coming to your attention, going through the build phases to your designing the skin for it to it's ready to go, and kind of give some insight into the amount of time start to finish on a individual plane, sort of average?
For sure, yeah. And that's interesting you asked that, because it is a process, and we do have a process in place. Typically what happens is, obviously, and I've gathered an amazing team of designers from around the country, and they are amazing. They really are. They come up with some great ideas, and we collaborate with them on a pretty much a daily basis. And what they do is we kind of go over what airframes they're interested in, because not only am I do what I want to put out planes that obviously people want, but it's, what are they interested in? What are they, because they're in the hobby, they're doing this stuff, they're doing it on a daily basis. So what do they want? Mm-hmm. And so we sit down and we talk about, what airframes do you want? And then we talk about what the market wants, what the market demand is, so we've noticed this plane is a hot topic right now out there in the interwebs or whatever. And so then we sit down, we have those all listed out, and then we go out there, and once they have completed their first build, which is the very first alpha build, they usually, and they've already flown it, they know how it flies, and I kind of look at that footage and talk to them, and then we do some strategic market analysis. We put the plane out there to strategic people and people who are really big into the hobby and get their thoughts on it. And that's kind of how we determine what, our next plane is going to be. So, and then once we get that down, we have a couple of alpha builders who build the very first ones, and they do an amazing job. And we make sure the plane is fairly solid before we send it to our beta team. And we have a group of beta builders, and they are absolutely amazing. They are always up for a challenge of a new plane, and they have to be, because it's quite a quick turnaround. We try to keep our planes at a fairly quick time frame so we can get them to market. And then our beta team beta tests them, and they go through the whole process. They go through, the stitching the plans together, building the airframe. At this beta point, the skins aren't necessarily done, and so they're just beta building and beta testing the plans themselves. And
they're making sure the plans are solid and the plane flies well.
Yes, absolutely. And they give us little tweaks here and there. We have been, I guess, fortunate that we haven't run into anything major, but we do ferret out some of those, little things. Maybe this could be a little bit stronger, or this could be a little bit wider, or, extend this piece out a little bit, or maybe it's tail heavy, whatever it may be. So they ferret it out. And then from there, while it's in beta is while we are working on skins, and we do the skins, we design them. And I'm kind of, I guess, if you will, the final beta tester. And typically when I build the airframe first, there's already been multiple people who have built it, including our beta team. And sometimes we'll leak those out, and sometimes we won't. And that really has a lot to do with, how we want this airframe to come into the RC world. And so sometimes you'll see little leaks out there, little hints, little Easter eggs, which are kind of fun. I'm a big Pixar fan, so I love the Easter eggs. And so we try to throw out some Easter eggs and try to throw some of our viewers and our members of the squadron a bone occasionally. And so after that process of the skins being done, I usually build mine, and I usually build probably 2 or 3 or 4 of the airframes so that I can get all the marketing material we need for the different skins.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have planes floating around my house galore, and I've given them away to local hobby shops to display on, to put on display and whatnot. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
One part of the hobby I never planned for, having a million airframes all around my house.
Yeah, right.
So after that, obviously we have after the skins are done, we know that it flies well, everything's ferreted out. We have and we're ready to go to market. We send it to manufacturing. And then we have I guess a pre-sale period where people can pre-order the kits, and then they will receive the kits first before we release the plans. So the people who support us by purchasing a kit are able to build and fly a specific airframe that they pre-ordered before anybody else can get their hands on the free plans.
All right. So what kind of time does that take from beginning to finished product? What are we looking at?
So the time frame it typically takes to push a product from conception all the way through ready to be released, it really varies. But typically we like to maintain between a month and a half from the time it gets out of beta to the time it's ready to be shipped. A lot of that's changed recently with the current events that's happening around the world. Unfortunately, with COVID and our manufacturing process, typically we're outsourcing the kits, the foam board cutting, the laser cutting of the foam board. And so during COVID, our manufacturing facility shut down completely. They weren't able to manufacture anything, and that really put a cramp in our style. And so we decided, we've got to change something so that this doesn't happen again, because we don't want the fans of the HangarRC and members of the squadron and people who support us to have to wait for an airframe that we've already hyped up on, on social media and on the internet and about this airframe. We don't want them to have to wait for it. And that's, and we got together and we started talking about what can we do to make sure this doesn't happen again in the future. And so we are actually in process right now of bringing our laser cut foam board manufacturing in-house. It's really cool because we've learned a lot, and we're still learning, but it's a nice thing to be able to do because it's going to speed up the process exponentially across the board. Instead of now me hand cutting out, the beta builds to make sure that they're final, now I can just run out to the lasers and rip one off. And so it hopefully will speed up our process. And our ultimate goal, and we haven't hit this so far, but this is our ultimate goal, is to be able to release one airframe per month. We're not there yet, and I don't think we're going to be there for a little bit, but that's our ultimate goal. Is we want to get as many airframes out to the community as we can.
That is an admirable goal.
I like what I'm hearing. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Good luck.
A lot of work.
That's going to be quite the undertaking. Yeah, that's okay. Though.
Yeah, so bringing the manufacturing in-house is really going to push us towards that goal.
Excellent. So for us, that kind of brings us to the questions that we had for you and for the HangarRC. But I know that you may have some things you want our listener to know, and you may, maybe our listeners get to hear a little bit of something coming down the pipe. I know you've shared a couple little things with me, and I'll tell you what, I'm excited for what's coming. I don't know if you could share with some of our listeners what they could get excited about.
So the first one that we've got coming down the pipeline, and it's going to be our next release, and we've already posted pictures of it on our social media. We haven't posted very many. So if you've been following us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you may have seen it already. Some of our beta builders, once again, we give our beta builders and the designers, sometimes we say, okay, you can post stuff about this. And sometimes we say, just hold off,
Keep it quiet.
So, once again, Easter egg out there. But so our next airframe that's coming down the pipeline that it's going to be awesome is we are releasing a T6 Texan. So
A lot of people love that.
It's an amazing airframe. The HRC Texan's coming down the pipeline, and it's going to be coming down pretty quick. So,
Good.
Keep your eyes out for that. It's an amazing airframe. It's designed by an amazing designer, Jared Rottenberger. He's amazing. He really is. The scale detail is going to be immaculate. We're actually working with a designer from South Africa, and he's going to be designing one of our skins. This is the first time we've ever worked with an outside designer for their skins, and
nice.
It's really going to be a really cool airframe.
Nice.
So that's what's coming next in our.
You promised us two.
Oh,
What's
two.
What's the second? What's the second?
What can I give you? Oh, yes. I'm also, and this is the first time we've ever said anything about. We've hinted at it. If you look at our last build video, hint, hint. You'll see it in the background, but I'm excited to announce that we are collaborating with two of probably, I would say, next to Josh Bixler, I would say probably two of the most prominent people in the foam board genre of RC.
Okay.
Dan Sponholes and...
Yeah, I was going to suggest.
Yes, of course. The man, the legend, the myth, the legend.
Yeah.
And with Rasterize, Stephen Rosmera, I probably butchered his last name. I apologize. And we are going to release the HRC Sidewinder.
Oh, yeah. Those skins are really good looking. You gave me a sneak peek, and I almost want to get the plane just for this because the skins are going to be out of sight.
Yes, they're amazing. Rasterize, Steven's done an amazing job. He really has. There's going to be 4 skins, I think, with those, and one of them was designed by me. The other 3 were designed by Steven. It's going to be so cool. If you don't know what the Sidewinder is, go look it up. It's on the flight test forums. Dan's done numerous things with it. It's a lot of people love the plane for battle combat, and the plans are out there right now on the FT forums. But we are going to be kitting it with skins, and it's going to be awesome. So the cool thing about this airframe, and this is what we when I got together with Dan and with Steven about, when we got together, we wanted to do something where we could give back. So what we're doing with this airframe, and we haven't worked out all the details yet, so you're kind of getting an insider look here. We are going to have all the proceeds from the sales of the of the kits, and I guess the skins at that matter, because we will offer the skins separately, but all the proceeds will go to, we will be doing, I guess, scholarship or sponsorship program, so that people can apply, more or less apply, and get those funds for their local RC club or for schools and STEM programs. As when I founded the HangarRC, we've always wanted to give back, and there's really been 2 groups of people I've really wanted to give back to. First of all, my mom's an educator, and I've always been really big into education. I was the dean of a graphic art program for about 4.5 years, and I've always wanted to give back to the education sector. And through the STEAM program, and I think what Flight Test is doing with their STEAM program, or STEM program, I think it's STEAM now because they've added arts in there. Anyway, I think it's amazing what they've been doing, and so we've always wanted to give back to that group of people and get programs in schools, and this is one way we can do it. The other group of people we've always wanted to give back to is veterans. There's a lot of veterans who fly RC. There's a lot of veterans in our hobby, and those are the 2 main groups of people that we've wanted to give back to. And as the HangarRC, we've actually donated quite a few airframes to local clubs when they do the raffles. To one of our local clubs here in northern Utah just repaved their runway at their flight field. At their flight field,
paved runway.
It's so nice. And so we want to be able to sponsor or have those local RC clubs in their flight fields, apply to receive some of these funds. So when we get a certain amount of money in the pot, I guess, if you will, from the sales of the HRC Sidewinder, then we will go out and people can submit applications to us. And like I said, we haven't worked through the details yet, and they'll be able to apply for this specific amount of funds. So just kind of a way we can give back to the community.
That's nice. It's a good way to engage people who will be future RCers, maybe.
For sure. Absolutely. All right. So the other thing I'm really excited to announce, like I said, we got tons going on here. It's a madhouse, but we have been working diligently with some people on the RC group forums that have very generously offered to put our models into a couple of the major simulators. The first one is HangarRC, and as of this episode, they should all be up on the RC group's forums. All our models are available to this day. The Vulture, the Wasp, and the Seven are all currently up on the RC group's forums. And I have to give a shout out to Rick P. So he goes by on the forums. Amazing programmer, developer. He's the one that's taken the bull by the horns on this one and gotten our airframes with all their varying skins, mind you, into HangarRC Simulator.
Yeah.
So
that's where I first saw your Sidewinder on there. I saw them kind of hinting at that, and I was like, "Oh, look at that!"
You know those Easter eggs that I love, right?
I know.
So yes, the Sidewinder is there. Oh, I forgot. The Sidewinder is there. The Vulture, the Seven, and the Wasp. They're all there. And he's committed to continue to put all of our airframes into that platform. So that you can go to even though HangarRC has been discontinued, you can still download a full version of it. The company's gone belly up, I guess, but it's community supported now. So you can go in and download any of the airframes. You can go in and download any of the airframes and practice them and fly them and learn how they fly before you fly your own. So it's really, really cool. The other one that we are doing is our airframes, they're not up yet. We're still working on it. We're working with another community member, another member of the squadron, on getting our airframes into real flight.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Very nice.
I remember looking into it and going, real flight's a lot harder to get things into. Real flight, or Phoenix seems to have its own kind of builder, but I think we didn't even really cover that in our sim episode. But
no,
that was it. It's cool. I'm excited to actually see it in both platforms, really, because they're both great to work with.
Super excited to announce that, and I'm assuming you guys will put a link down to the
give us a link and we'll make sure it's there.
Yes, I will. It's in my notes, actually. But
cool. Great.
Fantastic.
Cool. Well, thank you. Sorry, I had to get that in because they've worked really hard to get those up before this episode. So
don't apologize for people doing good work. Nice.
Did I get your 2 reveals in?
Yes, you did. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. We got a lot, and on top of that, guys, we really do have a lot of airframes coming down the pipeline. I can't even count how many we have, but we've got a lot of really cool stuff coming. We've got a lot of real fun stuff coming. So stay tuned, sign up for or log into our social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, subscribe to us, like us, because we're always throwing stuff out there and kind of giving you sneak peeks of what's coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll be sure to have links to all that in the show notes. So people can find that and find you and go check you out.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think we're reaching the lightning round part of this interview, which Matthew kind of came up with this when he did his first interview with Alan Hayes a good number of episodes back. But it's going to be a series
So if you're a good listener, sorry.
No, you're fine. So it's simply a series of this or that questions. And this time, because we're doing this with you, we'll be trading it back and forth. Matthew, you want to start it off?
Sure. Balsa or foam?
Foam all the way.
Wing or plane?
Whoa, plane for sure.
Park fly or club fly?
Park fly.
World War I, World War II, or experimental?
Ooh, I would say World War II.
Scratch or ready build?
Scratch build all the way.
Loctite tube color, red or blue?
Blue, red.
Pen or pencil?
Oh, man. You can't ask an artist that question.
We just did.
Both.
Okay. Stand or sit?
I would love to stay stand, but I spend most of my day sitting.
I more meant during flight.
Oh, no, stand. Stand all the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pinch or thumb?
Pinch or thumb? Thumb 83% of the time?
Okay.
83.
I don't know where I came up with that number. Maybe 73. I don't know.
All right. And now for the good one. Peanut butter, creamy or chunky?
Chunky all the way. My wife hates chunky.
If you have, if you add fluff, does it change your answer?
No.
Okay.
All right, good.
Interesting.
That's the right answer. There is a right answer to the last
I
one.
love it.
That's
I
for
love
sure.
it.
Nice.
All right, so moving into the second part of the meat of this episode, which is the review section on the Vulture and the Seven. And just to reiterate, kind of mentioned it before, but Sam, you sent us the kit with the skin for the Vulture and Seven. You sent the Seven to Matthew, the Vulture to me, to build and see and experience the process and then do a review on it. And that's what we're doing here.
For sure.
So, you know, it was nice we were able to see the tracking information. So both of us were sitting there watching that tracking, like, when's it coming? When's it coming? When's it coming? We're ready. We're looking forward to
The
this.
anticipation's killing me.
It is. It is. I was pleased to see that, you know, it wasn't damaged during shipping. Not a whole lot you could have done about that, regardless, other than, like, if the box itself was damaged. You'd packaged enough stuff inside it to keep it safe on the way. And then, you know, opening the box, there was a kit looking good. Opening up the package, getting all the parts out. Now, it was sort of like layered between, you had the foam board and then a skin sheet, and a foam board and a skin sheet. And I think we kind of talked about, because you have been outsourcing the laser cutting of it, there was a bit of a foam melt from the edges that went into all that. And it could be the angle of their laser, the burn speed they were going at. I ended up with some parts that just basically wanted to fall out of the foam board, so I just had to be mindful as I was pulling stuff out. Like, let's make sure these parts aren't falling and getting damaged. But, you know, the popping out as expected, pop them out, crack them, pull the sections out. And I followed your build video. Yeah, I'd watched it before, and I was trying to watch sections of it as I went through. The skinning process. So I built with this kit before. My father-in-law's simple cub, and if it basically follows that process, is, you know, what you'd expect in a kit. What then was different in the process was the skinning aspect, which you know, you've got videos on how to skin the plane,
Right.
and you do the skinning during your build video. So once I got past the initial mistake in my skinning process, which is to say, right there on our last build night was when I was starting this process. I popped the fuselage out and pulled the skin off, and I right before build night, I gone by Lowe's, picked up some 3M super heavy duty. Like, I got the heavy duty 90 stuff. Like, my skin's not coming off, and peeled the paper off and I'd watched the video, but it didn't stick with me, and I read the instruction on the back of the can, so I want to make sure I got all this. And again, this is on me, not a nature of the product that you're shipping, but it said, for best adhesion, spray on both surfaces, allow us to tack, and then place them together. And so, of course, that makes sense. And shot it straight across that foam, and just watched that foam melt and curl. Oh, why couldn't? So, like hindsight, I wish I had started with the vertical or horizontal stabilizer, a smaller, less complicated piece than the fuselage.
Right.
To have done that mistake on, because I ended up spending the rest of the build night printing the tile plans and recutting that fuselage.
Isn't that the beauty of foam board, though? I mean, really?
It is. So, having gotten past that mistake, and I'd reached out to you, I was like, uh-oh, and you said, well, graciously, did you watch the skinning video? Go watch it, because you weren't supposed to do that. And I said, you know what, you're right.
Yeah.
And I ended up picking up different, like some actual Loctite spray adhesive, because the stuff I got is something to make note of. Like that 3M is like, oh yeah, super heavy duty. It was shooting out like cobweb. Like it was just thick splotches spitting out. Like go for a lighter duty spray adhesive.
We've also found, just so you know,
the
Gorilla Glue, I guess it would be, spray also comes out that way unless you keep a really clean nozzle. So just for your noobs out there, when you're skinning something, make sure any spray glue will work, but just make sure that you keep a clean nozzle and don't spray the foam, because it's the propellant actually in the spray glue that actually eats the foam away. It's not the spray glue itself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yep.
Right. And like I said, I watched that stuff melt. So go for more like the Loctite or the Gorilla. So got the new fuselage cut out. Which I was like, man, this is why speed kits are nice.
Yes, they are.
So got it cut out, got it redone, and then started applying the skin. And the skin went on, the skin went on fairly well, really well, in as much as like I'm trying to work the fuselage section first. I should have started with a smaller piece, like kind of grasped the process. Was like, I get the fuselage done.
Right.
But and it gets a quick yield. Like you didn't spend a little bit of time, and all of a sudden you've got like a fuselage. It's huge, and it looks great.
And so getting the fuselage, I ended up with some areas like the central fin, the central tail of the three tails of the fuselage. Like it was a little off center, and that there was some things I had to kind of finagle during the folding and putting together of the fuselage itself as I went, because things had gotten a little off center, my cuts were a little off. So one thing I learned during this process of skinning, and the rest of the skinning went fine. Like once I realized, don't spray the foam, the rest of the skinning went great. You just spray it, stick it on, follow your video, and spray water on the foam, peel or on the paper, peel the paper off, then you're ready to, of course, apply your skin. And even cutting the skins out weren't bad. Just take it slow, nice sharp knife, good to go. What I had learned specifically from the fuselage, because I skinned the fuselage and then kind of called it there for several nights.
Right.
And once I was then ready to return, and I had skinned all the other pieces and was ready to, now I'm ready to form up this fuselage and get ready to go and start building, I picked up my fuselage, and my fuselage was just super warped and, like bowed out and such like that. And you and I kind of talked about it, but I think what it really boiled down to was once I had applied the skin, it's a different different paper thickness and weight than the rest of the paper that's in there. And I could be wrong on this, but sort of my impression of what happened was there's moisture in my house. I got humidity. We've had rain. It's doing numbers on the paper. Again, is what I took from it, that it warped the mess out of it. Now, during build, I was able to work through that, and I was worried that later in the build I was going to have more problems. But as I started bringing it all together, Matthew assured me as I brought stuff up to his place, I was continuing to build. Like, as you start putting all the pieces together and start putting, like, if it's all coming together right, then it's going to come out the way it's supposed to.
Right.
You and I had, sorry to interrupt, but you and I had talked briefly about would we need to put in formers or some sort of other secondary support piece to kind of reshape it back to
bow out.
Right. And then you finally, you got a moment to take some pictures and show it to me. And I realized, like, I've had other foam builds, some of my own, bow in that way. If you leave foam board out for long enough, it'll start to bow, and just by itself. And so I looked at it, I'm like, oh no. But when you finish building this is, because I built the micro at that point, so I knew there was going to be a doubler. I knew there was a piece that ran along the whole bottom, and it would pull everything kind of together. So, yeah.
And I knew those pieces were there, but I was worried that the bowing was not going to come out. So yeah, we talked about the doublers and all that, but as it all came together, it did. My point to take away from that is when you go to do your skinning, my recommendation would be skin like the horizontal vertical stabilizers. I didn't run into that issue because it was the same weight paper on both sides of that piece of foam. But when you're ready to do the fuselage, skin your fuselage, go ahead and start your build. Don't let that fuselage sit for a couple days the way that I did. That's how I encountered it. Yeah, so once the skin got on and I started forming the fuselage and building it and going along, like it all started coming together real nice. Now I think due to me having to have redone the fuselage section by hand, and Matthew will tell you from seeing my builds that adjusting my mic, that I'm only so great of a by the plan doer. A lot of my lines wind up not quite right. I'll get some crooked areas, and some of that bled over into the final of that fuselage. So then when I went to put my horizontal vertical stabilizer in, like it was off at a weird angle, so I had to do some trimming and shaving to get that right. And to get those to level out, really lay the glue to it, which probably helped with that tail heavy, or helped cause that tail heavy nature that I was experiencing.
For sure.
And then even though I had watched the video, I ended up not crossing the control wires or the push rods inside. I ended up just sticking them straight to the side. So there was there was a little bit of a tightness or rubbing that went on as the push rods were passing through the outside of the fuselage, through the top of it to go out to the control horns. And what I ended up doing there was taking some of that coffee stir and pushing it up the tube through that slot, and then kind of put a little glue there so that it had a bit of a friction free to work there.
Which is a good move. So I want to say that I can't tell you, I've built some flight tests, and this, when I look at it, I'm like, why are they crossing the wires? And what ends up happening, it's a kind of a weird phenomena that when you cross the wires inside the back of the fuse, you actually reduce the stress that's happening on the servo, and it travels cleaner, for lack of a better way to put it. It just seems to work better, and it doesn't make any sense to me. It should go straight, but it doesn't, and it works better that way. So if you see that as a new guy building your own, if you've never done it before, like, please cross the wires. You'll be happier.
This isn't Ghostbusters. Don't cross the streams.
Yeah, it's not Ghostbusters.
So yeah, there was some modification I needed to do on the back end to kind of bring it all back into shape. And if I had been on if I had been using the kit fuselage, then I likely would not have had those issues. But I had to kind of pull things back into square and such. And the rest of the build seemed to come together really nice, very straightforward. The skin was beautiful. I got the black and orange skin for the Vulture, which I love to death. It looks great now that it's done. I was really, when I went to put the dihedral in the wings, Matthew and I were sitting there looking, I was like, good Lord, that outer dihedral, or that, it was super steep. I was worried about how to, so just really had to lay the glue into it. but overall, like the whole build process, aside from I'm slow when I build, was a good experience. I enjoyed it. Difficulties that I thought I was going to have in the final product ended up working out. Now, I ended up having to cut out a section of the bottom sheet that goes down the bottom of the fuselage because I didn't have the small battery that was part of the default build for that plane. I had a 1300 3-cell, so I had to kind of do a little modification along the bottom of the fuselage to get that battery to go in where it was supposed to, and then mounting a wing straight up, simple enough. And then as far as once it was built, we went out to the field, we were getting ready to fly. It wound up being fairly tail heavy, which we started, finagling. I was pulling the battery forward. Now my 1300, I had the battery protruding out the nose by Velcro stuck to the bottom of the power pod, like you recommend to do it. But even with that battery, I had it shifted way far. I think I had the front of that battery about a half inch behind the spinning prop was how far I had to shift it forward, which could be the nature of how much glue I was laying into the back end of the plane, trying to get things to glue in and be right. Go ahead, Matthew.
Yeah, and that's something that Sam had mentioned. That plane and those planes in the early days there was no electric motors. So these were all gassers and things like that. So they had a really heavy chunk of metal stuck on the front. So the reason why the whole nose is so short coupled was because you were sticking a giant chunk of metal up front.
Right.
And the batteries just aren't an equivalent for that. They're close. And so that's part of why the balance is a lot harder to get on that model, because it's mimicking the old 1930s gasser, and it's just tough to make that work. And Sam did as good a job as anybody could to make that work. We found, Joe, if you move the CG to where the spar is, that it seemed to fly good.
Right. So, and that was some doing to get it forward enough. And
it's
again,
not easy.
I end up using more glue than is necessary sometimes, because I want stuff strong and secure. But where the indicators for the CG under the wings were sit back from the wing spar, and so I gotten it to sit fairly balanced at that point. And that first flight I was experiencing, like, I couldn't get that nose to come on down, and I think the headwind was preventing from the porpoising. So what Matthew and I did was we brought it back down and then had a look at it, and I said, look, should the CG be under the spar? And so we ended up strapping some smaller batteries to the nose of that plane to move that CG on forward. And once we got it closer to where the spar actually was, that's when I got the level easy flying that I was expecting out of that plane. And she did fly great once we moved that CG forward. I think the CG markers are a little too far back, personally, just the way they're printed. But I think once we got it pulled forward, and then she flew great. And Matthew's going to edit the videos and get them up. Once we got it up in the air and I got it trimmed out and it was flying right, Matthew will tell you, got it leveled off, got it going into the wind, and he's got a video of me hands off the sticks, just hold it. No hands, Ma. But it was a little bit of finagling to get it there, to get that front end weight.
Fair enough.
To get it where it needed to be.
Fair enough.
But once you do, boy, it was, and for a while I'm like, Joe, it's not a kite. Like, we don't, bring it back in a little, and you're like, I'm having fun. I'm like, all right.
So tell us about your impressions with the 7, Matthew.
Okay. I'm going to go through the kind of same discussions, but the package came much like yours. It was well packaged. The contents were in perfect condition when I opened up the big box, and then I opened up the package itself and paged through and realized it was pretty much the sheet that went with the foam board underneath for the most part, because there's this skins, sometimes you have to do both sides of the skin, so they're not going to match
They
up
don't
directly
always
with
line up. Yeah, you're
No,
right.
they're not going to. But you did as best you could to kind of line them up so that you'd see, if this is the fuse sheet underneath for the foam board, the skin that's on top of it is the skin for the fuse, which is
Right.
pretty cool. I enjoyed that. I noticed that you had 3D printed parts, and they
Yes.
are very strong 3D printed horns, which was pretty cool. I really enjoyed that, and the firewalls were very sturdy, and they fit the motors perfectly, and they fit the power pod the way they were supposed to. So I really enjoyed seeing that. I was kind of surprised. I wasn't really sure what I was. I guess I was expecting a balsa firewall or something like that.
Right.
So I was expecting, and so I saw that. That was pretty cool.
Good.
And otherwise it was pretty much what I expected to see out of a kit. The laser came through. Joe talked about the foam. So I compared the flight test kit because my son was building one, so I happened to have the excess foam from that. And I had just built the Spitfire, which was cut by a friend of mine who had his own CO2 laser cutter. So I had that foam,
Oh,
and
interesting.
then I had yours. So I was able to kind of compare the
That's cool.
three. And yeah, it was neat. It was neat to see. And it pretty much, and the, it seems to me like whoever you had cutting it at the time, they were either trying to overburn it or do it faster, do it slower, or whatever. I don't know anything about lasers, so I'm talking to my butt with that. But it was a little different. They basically, there's extra foam melt in the kits that we received. But I also know that, as you mentioned, I think the laser cutting is coming in house, and you'll be able to control that better.
Yeah,
So
that's
I'm
another reason why
sure,
we're bringing it in house is for quality control for sure.
exactly. And I think with the foam cut, and I've built those kind of kits, and having the excess foam melt meant you were using a little extra glue than I think you probably would want to have people use on your kit. So
Right.
it really wasn't a huge, it certainly wasn't a deal breaker. It was just something we had noticed. So I wanted to make a comparison. I've got some photos, and we'll see if we can't
Awesome.
share them with our listeners and you.
Yeah.
So you
Appreciate
have
that.
them. Yeah, sure. The print quality for the skins was awesome. So Sam didn't realize he had asked what kind of color, because he was asking, well, what do you think? What would you like to have? And I'm like, I love the orange. Orange is my favorite color. If it's orange, it's good. But what he doesn't know is I love orange yellow. Okay, and I'll call it, the color that he sent was pretty much the orange yellow, more yellow than orange, but it's not a bright yellow like a banana. It's more like an orangey yellow, which is like my favorite color. So you managed to pick like the best ever.
Awesome.
I would call the DeWalt box, like DeWalt
Yeah.
color, is pretty close to
Yeah.
the color of the kit.
I get that.
So, yeah, I loved it. Looked great. And looking at the Vans RV7 and all the different, because that's a private kit. So you basically go, you buy the kit, you build the plane yourself, and then so usually people will kind of customize it to make it look themselves. It's not like there's a company that's building them and say, you have 3 options, we're going to paint it for you. They say, well, it's yours. You do whatever the heck you want with it. And most people would come up with this design here. And I looked at a lot of different skins and a lot, just because there's an idea of like, if I were to build one for myself, what would I do with it? And half of the existing planes that are of this model look exactly like what you have, and it looks fantastic. I love what it looks like. So you did a great job with the skin in my book.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see. The accuracy of the cutting was perfect. Like the things fit per the plan. I mean, they fit exactly like they should have. So I didn't have any issues with any fitment. I'm trying to think. So yeah, everything once I started pulling it. Oh, the interesting thing about the 7, it uses a technique that I hadn't used before, which was there's the spar piece, but in front of the spar, because this is a symmetrical wing, to ensure that it would come out symmetrical, you had formers that run along the length of the spar, about 4 per each side, and then the ends of the wings kind of taper down and kind of sweep back, which is really cool. It's a beautiful look. It's something that's very attractive about the original plane. And the designer you had, that pulled this together did a great job of capturing that. And it's a very interesting, different technique to build. And it was pretty fun to learn that new technique through your kit.
Awesome. Yeah, Browning. Excuse me, Kylan Browning was the designer, and he's actually my only designer that's local, and he's amazing. He's going to be a pilot in real life. That's what he wants to do. He flies paragliders or motor power glider, whatever they call them, and he's amazing. Okay. And those techniques are uniquely to the Seven, yeah, and it's awesome.
Okay.
So thank you.
Now, I'll admit that if you're used to the flight test, just basically throw a spar in there, fold the wing over, and you're done, you might not be as much a fan of this style build, but I think it's worth the reward. It's worth the little extra effort that it takes, and it's not much at all. But again, it's like a couple extra steps, and you're used to I just fold and go. Like, okay, well, cool. Then you might be a little annoyed at this, but I promise you the result is worth it. And then the canopy. So I actually built 2 canopies. I built the canopy that was provided. And then I took that same skin or that same pattern, and I actually took a muffin tin. I had a muffin package that we bought. So the top is basically a flat, clear acrylic sheet, effectively. And so I put the pattern, it happened to fit in there. I'm like, cool, I'm gonna pencil it out. And I cut it out, and I cut an extra base to the canopy, and I just taped it down, and it looks awesome.
It does.
And honestly, I think you can do that with almost any one of your kits. I do we built a Spitfire. That's another thing you can do, for the flight test. But like anytime there's a canopy, if you've got a little bit of plastic that's clear from, I don't know, a toy that your kid, for me, it's my kid has a bunch of toys. Maybe you have something or you buy a bunch of muffins and the container is a clear plastic top. Save that flat piece. You can use it to make canopies. So really neat. Anyway, so I pulled it all together. It really was a straightforward build. I talked about the landing gear. And again, I wanted landing gear after looking at the aircraft itself. But more importantly, knowing that I was going to have to either hand launch this and potentially throw it in the dirt before I realized it, which had already happened once because the prop came off right as I brought it up to speed. The O-ring popped, right? And the propeller went wing, and then the plane had no thrust, so it went poof. So what I learned 2 things. 1, I should put landing gear on it. 2, it's a robust build. I mean, the only thing that was damaged was a little bit of a crease in the undercowl where it landed dead on. It's a sturdy build. That's the other thing. Like, I can grab this plane in almost every spot, and I'm not worried about denting it. The fuselage has doublers, so it's a little thicker where it needs to be. Otherwise, it's a solid case, and I really enjoyed that. Don't spray the skin in the middle of the night so you can't see how much glue you're getting on or not on. I had a couple spots I had to touch up. So when you do it in the daylight so you can see if you're actually covering it evenly or not.
Mm-hmm.
That's just
you don't want to know how many skins I've sprayed at 1, 2 in the morning.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'm going to raise my hand to be part of that crew. Okay, so then we talked about the flight earlier today, and one of the things I want to say is that I was just testing to see if it would roll across the grass, and again, this is with a full battery, and before I could even get too far, it started pulling the tail up and just basically skimming the grass, and Joe hadn't come over to film it yet. And I was like, oh crap, I have to hold up. I have to wait. We're supposed to film it. I want to film this. Oh shoot. So I kind of throttled back down, and then we brought it back around, and so it's easy to fly. I would say I guess I set my rates the way I have my servo horn to control surface horn. I try to set them at the same distance, the same distance away from the rotation point.
Right.
And it creates a good throw. It's usually the furthest out. So it creates a pretty decent throw. And I always put mine down to 50% of whatever it was. it doesn't need much to work well. And I just had a lot of fun rolling around the sky. Like it rolled well. It did loops. Because it was more scale in its power system. I had to kind of get a little bit of speed and kind of let it come down the hill, as it were, to get enough speed to kind of do the full loop with comfort. But even when I didn't do that, Joe, you saw that it would kind of come up and it would slow and it'd come around, and it would still loop really well, and that was a lot of fun. There's plenty of room in the canopy or on the canopy. If you do the clear one, there's plenty of room inside to put a camera, probably even a GoPro, easily. Just trying to think. It flew inverted very easily, as well as regular because of the symmetrical airfoil. And for the size, it fit comfortably in the back of in my trunk. It's very similar to say if you built the FT Spitfire, it's almost identical size-wise as far as plane
wingspan goes.
Wingspan versus length and that kind of stuff. So
with 12 kids in the car. I'm just kidding.
Pretty close. Those 2 kids, Joe, and a go bag.
Well,
myself.
Joe's like 3 kids.
Yeah,
that's right.
Well, he acts like 3 kids.
Yeah,
so maybe.
That's what I was thinking.
Hey, now.
Fair enough. All right. Yeah. So as far as the battery life, for the, I'll call it the scale system I had, I could only bring the battery down to about 3.8 volts per cell. From 4.2. So I really kind of only eked out about half of the battery life that I probably could have gotten if I had probably a more engaging power system, maybe. Again, that's on me. But I think we got about, Joe, is that about 5 to 6 minutes or so out of that? So I think if we had a little bit more powerful system, I probably could have gotten about 10 minutes of flight out of that.
I feel like would have been the case. Plus, you were burning that battery faster anyway because you were running it
at 100%
full tilt.
Yeah,
right. Because the motor wasn't the higher kV motor that I was going for. And I'll interrupt here because I didn't really talk about battery life on the
how did
Vulture
yours go?
It went well. So the first flight, and again, I'm running a 1300 milliamp hour. The first flight, as I was fighting that tail heavy nature, I ended up bringing it from 4.2 per cell down to about 3.9. So I've burned up sort of like 0.3 volt in the first 7 minutes of flight time, and then we brought it down, kind of reworked some things, and then we got another 7-8 minutes of flight time. But by that point, because we had balanced it out, I was able to fly so much of it at just half throttle, and that was with my more B-Pack motor, a 950 kV, that really wasn't even quite the motor that was designed for that. So 50% throttle, just buzzing around, and then set it down afterwards and check the battery, and I was 3.6, 3.7. Like there was still plenty of juice in that battery.
Yeah.
So like the Vulture you're going to get a ton of flight time out of, just because of the nature of that plane.
Well, we've had people report over half-hour flight times, or pushing close to half-hour flight times on that airframe. So yeah.
And is that with a 2200 milliamp 3-cell?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want to make sure that if if you're building it and you've got one of those like that, and so what I love about that stat right there, and it's part of what I loved about recommending the FT, the Old Fogey to you, Joe, was that's a great platform to learn on. You don't have to just fly for 3 minutes and go, okay, we got to bring it in and switch out everything. Like, no, give it a try. Go fly around some more. Okay, you think you got the hang of it? Try some more, because there's still plenty of battery left to try and learn and test and try and then go, okay, I got it now. I got it. Yep. You have enough attempts to be able to really get your mind wrapped around what you're trying to do. So it's
great. The Vulture can hang in the air. Yeah, and the Vulture can hang in the air. It flies so well. Once you get it balanced out, you get it up, and then you bring it down 50%, again, on a 1300 milliamp, which is what I had. You fly for days with that thing. Yeah. It just doesn't take much to stay going.
Wait a second, Joe.
Once you get her trimmed out, and then she's flying great.
Wait, we had a 30, so we had a 5500 or 550 milliamp 3-cell as ballast, as well as the 1300. Heck, that's almost 1900 milliamps right there.
Dude, if you hook those together, man.
I know, if only you could have just brought it together. Anyway, no. So I guess what I'm saying is you get plenty of battery life out of this setup, and it's a great platform to attach gear to. There's a bunch of different locations that it was easy to do. I think probably one of the bigger downfalls of this plane is that to get the structural rigidity that is going to give you a happy, durable life for the plane, you're going to have to glue the wing into the fuse.
Yeah, you have
And it's
to.
the same thing. You have to,
Yep.
just like the FT. I'm looking at the Spitfire because we flew it today.
Right.
The Spitfire is identical. Like without the wing in, and I experienced it myself. That thing will crack right in half.
Right.
Pretty much. And Joe got an experience of that today. But like the without the wing,
Not due to that reason.
no, sadly no. But I mean, without the wing though, it's so much weaker. But by gluing the wing in, you really make a durable platform. The only difference is that you can't take the wing off, so you really do need a good amount of space to transport it.
Yes, and that was the way it was
It's
designed,
worth it
for sure.
Yeah, right. I mean, you could tell. But when you look at the Vulture, you take the wing off and you put them side by side, and it's almost like carrying a little package under your arm kind of deal.
I think you referred to it earlier as neat.
Yeah, yes, a very neat package. And
Yes.
yes. And that's it. And that's one of the things that I like about those kinds of planes is that when you take them apart and put them next to each other, you have a lot of room.
Right.
And then I think the other thing that I didn't like, but it's not a deal breaker at all, was the way the motor is mounted in this plane. It's set perfectly in there, but when it's finished up and enclosed, there's no easy way to get into it. And Sam, you and I talked about possibly when you put in, if you're going to use the motor that you're supposed to have in there, and make motor lead extensions. So that way the actual connection to the ESC is in the fuselage main body area. There's plenty of room in there. You can do a ton of stuff with it. But what I found is I had to go back and forth. So I had to pull the wires all the way through forward along with the ESC through the little tiny opening in the cowl and switch the wires so that it would reverse the direction because I had the wrong stuff on and I had to feed it back through. And if you want to avoid that, it's simple if I had thought it through, would be to build motor extensions. It's also difficult if you have maybe an issue with the connection to, I'll call it the firewall plate that's set at the back of the cowl area. Right. That's where that box is attached to. It's really hard to get to if there's an issue after it's built. Right. So one of the options is to just cut the cowl and remove the whole front so that you have a lot more access to it. It's kind of like opening up the hood to the car and leaving it open.
Yes.
Like you can get around to the motor now because it's open. But if that's not the look you want, if you want the more scale look, you have to plan ahead.
Right. And that's the cool thing about when we designed it, we wanted to give people options. You can definitely cut the cowl and you have all the room in the world, or you can do the scale look where it fits nice and neat and tight around the motor. And by doing that, you just fill in the score line with glue, and you've got the structural integrity that you need. But yeah, it's all about options, and that's what we love to give people is the options. Just like our different skins, we love to give people those options.
One of the things I'll also add is, most of the planes that I build that are foam are either a flight test kit or one of their forum members or whatnot. Obviously, we're all involved in that community as it is.
For sure.
One of the neat things that they've put together is the pod system, the power pod system and all that stuff. I want to say that while I'm I guess complaining about the motor mount, this system is set up where that motor mount dimensions are the same as a power pod. So you can it's a very simple modification to cut the hole through and then have the power pod feed all the way through that firewall and the cowl.
Right.
And and be able to take it in and out if you want. There's some modifications, but it's easy to do. And if that's one of the reasons why you don't want to get this plane, you're a fool. Get the plane,
Right.
make the modification, you'll be happy.
So we had a beta builder that loved to. He was all about the swappable and having power pods so we can use it in multiple planes. It's not something I've really been a huge fan of because I'd rather not move electronics around because I always forget. But he
teach their own.
Yeah, and that's what's beautiful about the hobby. But he modified it and put a power pod in there. So yeah, it's definitely doable. But it's just the way we designed the plane.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that, if you're looking at this model, and again, I find it to be a very attractive plane, that if that's one of the reasons where you're like, I'm not sure I want to get this, because the Vulture has a removable pod.
Yes.
There's an easy way to fix that. You can make it swappable if you put your mind to it.
Yep.
It's not that hard.
Mm-hmm. All right. We've been going for a while. Let's work on getting to the tail end of this. Matthew, I'm not going to have a whole lot on my workbench in the near future, just because I was finishing up the Vulture. I'm looking forward to having that as my keep it in the back of the Prius and maybe go flying after work. And you've got my Spitfire because I broke it in half. So there's not really going to be anything on my workbench for a while,
right,
as I've got some projects around here to finish up. But what's going to be on yours?
Well, as our listeners,
in the coming weeks,
as our listeners might have guessed, I'm going to be fixing your Spitfire, and get that up and running. And then the other thing is that there is a challenge that's been released by one of our listeners on the forum for a STOLS, short takeoff and landing challenge, that's to be completed before Thanksgiving, U.S. Thanksgiving Day. There's a handful of Canadians who are like, which one? And it's like, well, I'm an American, and so we're doing American Thanksgiving. So okay. Anyway, so by close of day on Thanksgiving, you basically make a short takeoff landing. There's a handful of basic things. So I've thrown my hat in that ring, whatever that's worth. I'm going to make a short takeoff and landing Silver, which is a plane I designed and built for the community member who laser cut the Spitfire for me. So I'm going to turn that into a short takeoff and landing. So I'm going to make it a wider chord and leading edge slats and a bunch of other fun things. So I'm going to try to do what I can do with that because it's a high wing trainer style plane, but it's neat.
Awesome.
So that's probably what I'll be working on over the next couple days, couple weeks. So chances are, if you come and join us on any of the next couple build nights, you're going to see me building some of that.
Okay.
But I think that's about it.
Sam, do you have anything on your workbench that's not necessarily HangarRC in development stuff?
No, I don't. I have. Obviously, my built workbench is full of HangarRC stuff. I haven't had the chance to build a whole lot more. For whether that's good or bad, I don't know. But what's going to be on my workbench is the Texan. That's what's my next build. And that's about it for now.
All right.
Well, what about this? So one of the things that I found interesting is you're like, I haven't flown him forever, and because you knew we were going to ask you about flying, you're like, I need to go fly.
I had to.
So now that it's been a while and you flew, obviously your kids were so excited. Are you going to fly again in the next couple of weeks? You think?
I hope so, but I really don't have anything. That's the worst thing about the hobby. I don't have anything that's flyable right now.
What?
I know. I've got my...
You make planes for a living. I'm just kidding.
Welcome to my life. No, I've got my 7 that's been wrecked a couple times. I got 2 7s that are kind of wrecked. I guess I can't say. I have 2 wasps sitting upstairs. See, I have 2 of everything. I have 2 wasps sitting upstairs that I could probably fly, but I've kind of been a little bit hesitant because I don't know. I want my son's been bugging me to fly the wasp, and I really want for him to fly him, but he's not there yet. And I don't...
Well, then you fly it and show him how amazing it is. Get the buddy box system going.
Well, if you saw one of my last posts, my last wasp, I tanked into the ground. The nose is destroyed. It was bad.
Nice.
I just ended up scrapping the whole airframe, but
All right.
Anyway, yeah. So I want to rebuild the Vulture. I want to get the skin that I like best, which is our yellow and red skin.
Okay. Yeah.
I want to get that rebuilt because that's my go-to plane. I mean, the 7 is actually my go-to plane, but that is my plane that I know that my kids can all fly. And so I always want to have one of those on hand because I can give it to my youngest or my oldest, and we know we can go out and have a good time. So
nice, good. We'll do it.
Yeah,
do it. Post it. So
I'd
love to put that as part of the listener links.
I will.
That'd be pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I think that brings us around to our closing, which means that's usually where we talk about what are we going to talk about next. And what are the things we want to bring up as a reminder at the end of the show here. So as a reminder, we're going to do another build night on October 17th. It'll probably be between 7 and 10 or 7 and 11. It'll be in our Discord forum. Look for the link in our Facebook page, probably the day or the day before. We're also going to do a HangarRC build night as well. Sam, I think you might want to mention something.
If none of you, if you're new to the podcast and you guys haven't jumped on a build night, I mean, man, they are awesome. They're so much fun. I never thought that I'd ever have that much fun online. I mean, it is. Even if you're not building something, just jump on and have a chat. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of gearheads like ourselves, and it's something that you guys came up with, and I think is phenomenal. So jump on and join us for sure.
Awesome.
Well, we appreciate that, Sam.
Yeah,
You're
thank
welcome.
you. Good. Well, then I think that brings us to our next topic. Do you know what we're going to talk about, Joe?
Were we doing the coverings next?
It's possible. We might be doing that, or we might be talking about forum challenges. This is the time of year where a lot of people kind of put together decent. I'll call it decent in the sense that it's usually well defined. There's a clear goal or a clear design objective, and it oftentimes kind of incites the community that the flight test community, and possibly I don't know, Sam, if the hangar or the squadron has that kind of thing going on. I'm sure it will in the future.
Yes.
If it doesn't now.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things I like to talk about. I want to have a discussion with one of those gentlemen who are putting the challenges on. I know I've put the Build Rory challenge and the April Showers challenge on the forums. It's a neat thing to do. It's a lot of fun to kind of drum up the community spirit. And oftentimes out of that comes some of the most interesting designs, plans, planes, and stories that come out of that. So I'd love to highlight some of the community challenges that I've seen. Think about possibly having one of the people besides myself who puts together those kind of things. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's going to bring this episode to closure. Sam, thanks for joining us. Sam Platt with the HangarRC.
Thank you.
And thank you for the Vulture and the 7. We enjoyed building them and enjoyed flying them, and I know we're looking forward to continuing being able to fly them. Matthew, if there's nothing else.
I just want to mention again that the discount code over at the HangarRC is going to be ARCN-BN1, all lowercase, and that'll give you 10% off of the whole store at the HangarRC. Go out and get something to build with us at our next build night.
Okay.
Awesome.
Well, guys, thank you again, and we will see everybody next time.
Bye.
Bye.